FanDuel, friends and fam, what is going on? What is happening? We are here. It's about to go down. It's the FanDuel NFL Draft Round 1 live stream. Thank you guys for tuning in. Those of you who are watching on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, we appreciate that. You know what it is with the NFL. It's a 365, 24/7 product, and it kicks off every season with the NFL Draft. This is going to be a fun one to talk about, and we're excited to get after it with you guys. I'm Ryan Williams. You can find me on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. And I'm here joined by three co-hosts that are they're just eager. They're chomping at the bit to talk to you guys, to talk about the draft, and I'm going to introduce them in. But before I do that, just wanted to thank you guys. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and hit that like button for us. We appreciate all the love that we get from you guys. And just by hitting that like button, it does us wonders. So we appreciate that. Make sure you're subscribed so you get all the live content that we have offering. If you're also watching along on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, we got giveaways for you guys. NFL jersey giveaway, $100 in FanDuel credit. You guys definitely want to get signed up for this. I think our producer, Andrew Andrew, I'm sorry I botched your name there. Greenblatt is going to throw up a QR code for you guys. So make sure you guys scan that. You guys can enter in there. Our producer, Andrew, you guys cover it as always. Get your questions in for tonight, guys. Make sure you're rocking along with us. DFS betting, season-long implications. We'll have you all covered. Let's welcome in the co-hosts. I'm going to start it off with Brandon Gdula. You can follow him on Twitter at Gdula13, managing editor for Numberfire, one half of the Heat Check podcast with Jim Sonis. And Jim, unfortunately, wasn't able to make it today. But Brandon, are you going to be okay with that?
Yeah. I had to do a lot of offensive tackle prep work, looking at like agility scores. That's Jim's favorite thing to brag about on Slack to me, and JJ updating us on which tackle just set some sort of record for agility. So no, I don't know anything about offensive tackles. So we're gonna get a few of those in the top of the draft. So it's gonna be a little bit of a slow start if you're here for the fantasy analysis, but that's all right because we got betting takeaways from inside the top 10, because I think all 9 of the 10 teams picking. I mean, we got more than we got the Jets and Giants picking double there, but all these teams are like dead last in pressure rate. So we're going to see some edge rushers off the board, but that's all right. We got some betting takeaways there.
Yeah, lots of betting takeaways that we have to talk about, and who better to talk about that with than when Jessica Gridiron, guys. You can follow her on Twitter at Gridiron and Wine, handling betting content for FanDuel, and she's been killing it, guys. I mean, if you haven't been following along with her, the NCAA March Madness, she had you guys covered. She has you guys covered with futures for MLB. She's been killing it in NBA. And Jessica, we're hoping that you can kill it tonight for the people for the NFL draft. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here, and this is going to be a crazy, weird draft. I mean, there's going to be unexpected things that are going to happen. I can't wait to just see what is a quarterback going to really get picked, when and where, and all these wide receivers. It's exciting, and there's wine in my name for a reason, and I feel like the adrenaline of just like you not knowing what's going to happen and the excitement around it. I thought I'd pour myself a glass of Albarino to, just keep my vibes there, since I can't be in Vegas, drinking away and enjoying myself like I really wish I could be. But yeah, I'm excited.
Absolutely. We are excited. And the excitement, along with the NFL draft is in and of itself. But then we got the excitement when we welcome in JJ Zachariason. You guys know him. Don't be shy. It's late round QB. It's late round fantasy football without the trademark. I think that's coming, though. Isn't that right, JJ?
Let's hope. Yeah, let's hope. Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. JJ, you guys can follow him on Twitter at Late Round QB, formerly of Numberfire, now holding it down at Late Round Fantasy Football. And JJ, why don't you talk to the people just about what's going on? And we're happy to have you on again.
Yeah. So, I'm the owner of Late Round Fantasy Football. Over the last couple months, I've been just grinding this wide receiver, running back, tight end, and quarterback class for fantasy purposes. I published a prospect guide back in March that breaks everything down. I have a model that I'll be talking to, and I'm not referring to a male or female model. I'm referring to a spreadsheet and looking into numbers and data. And so that model spits out, it's a running back and wide receiver model that can spit out who's going to be good, who's not going to be good and for fantasy football purposes at the next level. It predicts the first 3 years of a player's career in fantasy football. So we'll have some numbers to throw at you, hopefully here in the first round, because I think that we're going to see at least 5 wide receivers get drafted. I think you can feel pretty confident that 6 will probably go, and then I think it starts to get a little iffy after that. But that's still a good number of wide receivers, that are going to be very, very pertinent and relevant for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot to talk about, even without the maybe skill position players that we're used to or that we saw last year. We had a ton of fun just breaking down the 2021 prospects and what was coming in. But JJ, you kind of alluded to this offline when we were prepping for the show, and just that there's going to be some madness that happens today. I think that we definitely see some people move around. I mean, even from just the perspective of the first round pick, like so many drafts prior to this one, I felt like we knew exactly who the first round pick was going to be. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You just were going to be losing money if you didn't have the right person. And now we have, this kind of debate about who's going to go number one. It's, at first it was Hutchinson, and then we saw things change overnight with it being Travon Walker, and he's the favorite. We have him at FanDuel on the sportsbook right now at minus 450. Very juiced up there. So there's a lot that's going on. What are some storylines that we could be looking for here in the first round, or trades that you guys could be excited about? JJ, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that the reason we're seeing what we're seeing and analysts saying what they're saying about this draft being so unpredictable is that there's just no clear-cut number one guy at almost every single position, and at least at the positions that we usually value highly from a draft standpoint and from a team building standpoint. So you're talking edge rush, there's a handful of really good ones, but there's no consensus top one. Even tackle, you have very good tackles in this class, but there's not a consensus top one. And then you look at like cornerback, you have good corners in this class, but not a top one. And then wide receiver, the position that I've studied a lot over the last couple of months. I've been kind of describing it also as just flat. Like it's a fairly deep wide receiver class. I think it's deep until you get to around like the wide receiver 10, 11 or so. And then, it's still fairly, it's still okay, but I really do think that the top, like at least 8 wide receivers are very, very strong. So, but the problem is you could, right now going into this draft, Garrett Wilson's my wide receiver 1 for fantasy purposes. I could leave tonight thinking that Jameson Williams is the wide receiver 1, or thinking that Drake London's the wide receiver 1. I mean, it can go in a lot of different directions. So that's definitely one thing to keep in mind for fantasy purposes. Other storylines, I think there's 2 main like pivot points in this first round for potential trade ups, because it's so flat across all these positions. We're likely not going to see a ton of trade ups, at least early on, just because, there's not this like stud that teams necessarily have to go after. But I do think that Carolina's in a really interesting spot at number 6, where they don't have a lot of draft capital because of, the Darnold stuff and just, they're not working with a lot. They might not want to go the quarterback route because there isn't a top tier quarterback necessarily in this class. And if they don't go that route, sure, they can go offensive tackle. I think that's probably if they do make the pick, that's probably the route that they go in. But, they're at a spot where there's going to be good players there, obviously, and the team could want to trade up there. And then the other sort of pivot point, I think, is 12, where Minnesota's at, where, Minnesota, they could go defense on the defensive side. They could go wide receiver in this draft. But I do think that they are in a good spot for a team to leapfrog. I think Houston's at 13, leapfrog Houston, especially if there's, like a quarterback situation. I've seen a lot of people speculate that the Steelers could trade up with Minnesota, give their second round pick, and move from 20 to 12, and then get Malik Willis or get whatever the quarterback is QB1 on their board, which seems to be Malik Willis. But so I think those 2 points are sort of inflection points in this draft. Hopefully we get some trades, because it always makes it interesting and even more unpredictable. But I do think that that's sort of the way that I'm viewing this draft in total.
And Jessica, when we talk about things from a betting standpoint, just getting the bets in, and guys, for you guys who are watching along with us, we appreciate it. 5 minutes, just over 5 minutes for the Jaguars pick to be in. Of course, they're using the clock because it's Trent Baalke, and he's just going to milk this for what it's worth. Jessica, from a betting standpoint, what are you looking at? What's standing out to you on night 1 of the NFL draft?
Well, in all honesty, I mean, it's seeing which teams are going to benefit from that these top 10, honestly, like the top 10 players, who's going to benefit team wise and is going to utilize them, from a wide receiver standpoint, as far as is it going to give them the juice to be able to be more successful this coming season. It's all about the trenches, in my opinion, as well. And the good thing, even JJ mentioned, there's a lot of edge rushers. There's defensively, then you look at offense, there's a lot of teams that need tackles, things like that. So if they're able to protect their quarterback, and then we know that these teams are going to be able to do better from a betting standpoint, that's only going to, allude me to like these teams and have them projected to be able to win more games.
No, absolutely. That's going to be a fun one to monitor. It's just fun to talk about the top 10 picks as well. I know that on FanDuel, you could get after a free roll to predict the top 10 picks or close to them. I think it was a 10K free roll, 2,000 the first. So that's going to be a fun one to monitor throughout the night. Brandon, the pick is in for Jacksonville. They have made the pick. We're just waiting for Gdula and the hugger that he is to approach the podium, and we'll kick those off there. I guess that would have been a fun bet, Jessica, to over under how many hugs that Gdula gives out. But Brandon, with the pick being in, kind of just talk to me. You do a lot with win totals, and kind of talk to me about what this pick could mean necessarily for win total without it being like a quarterback that we're used to seeing in the previous drafts. I think this is going to be like the first draft, or like one of the only drafts. I think there were 11 where a quarterback wasn't selected in the top 5, and that's pretty much what we're looking at here since 1980. It's kind of crazy. What stands out to you about this pick?
Yeah, so last year, leading into the draft, I did some research because I was building out win totals before the draft. Usually it was after the draft, and then we started doing this stream, and I was like, need to get some win totals prepped. So I was like, okay, how reactive do I need to be to win totals and updating the numbers based on first round picks, second day picks? And the answer is not a whole lot, especially defensively. Defense, I think, it just lends itself to year over year volatility as it is. So it's very, one bad defense 1 year, they're naturally, these teams are going to regress toward the league average. And so you can invest in an edge rusher here, which we're all assuming, Jacksonville's going to do. The data kind of says that their defense is going to trend back up, but not necessarily whether they take an edge rusher or not, which sounds kind of weird, but that's just how defense in the NFL works. The biggest impact that I find, actually, just offensive tackle, offensive lineman. That's something that Jim, who's not here, Jim would be able to expand on this even more than me, but he found that a few years ago as well. And it still holds up. Like, you invest in the offensive line, I can actually feel like I can go tangibly upgrade your offensive efficiency because it impacts every single play if these guys are out there on the field. These are, tackles they are the lifeblood of an offensive line. And I guess center really is the signal caller. But, if you don't have good tackles, you don't really have a good offensive line. And so when I'm looking at things, I'm not going to adjust very much at all whenever we see these edge rushers go. It looks like Walker did go number 1 overall. I'm looking more for quarterback changes, and I'm looking more for offensive line investments to really make a tangible shift to my win total projections.
Definitely. So let's talk about this first round pick here in Travon Walker. And as we kind of alluded to at the top of the show, this was a guy who was not really projected to go in the top 10, like 6 weeks ago. And then all of a sudden has been catching some steam here, the edge rusher out of Georgia. And a lot of talk has been made about him kind of being, maybe the upside guy, and that Hutchinson would be a little bit more of the safe play. And we know that Balky is going to do what Balky does. He makes those home run hits that he swings for the fences. And this is one of those guys. JJ, what's your thoughts when you see this pick roll in, as this was pretty much what we were thinking was going to happen pretty much as Monday this week, and now it came to fruition?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, with, a lot of people will be like, oh, who do you want your favorite team to pick? Who do you want and I always approach it first by what position do I want my favorite team to pick? Right. And at least Jacksonville is going at it from a perspective of getting the right position that you want to team build and build around. And so, I don't study edge the way that other draft analysts might study edge. And from what I've gathered, looking at PFF data and such as well, What I've gathered is that, yes, there a lot of people like Hutchinson more than Walker, but the gap there isn't so dramatically insane that this is just such like an out of nowhere pick where, there's this obvious gap in terms of evaluation from one player to the next. So if they like Walker more, Balky really likes his long armed guys. Then, if he doesn't want to get a T-Rex defensive end, then that's the reason why he went Walker's way instead of Hutchinson. And at the end of the day, I think that we all have to have some sort of humility when we're evaluating these guys, because we're going to be wrong all the time, right? And at least they're approaching it from the standpoint of they're getting a player that plays a position that matters, that you should be team building around. And they're not doing something like the Giants did and Dave Gettleman did a handful of years ago by getting Saquon Barkley 4th overall. You don't want to get devalued positions that early, or 2nd overall, whatever it was. You don't want to get these positions so early because you're just devaluing them inherently, and because they are devalued. I at least, it's a good thing that they at least went after the right position. And I think it's not something that's just so drastically horrible from an evaluation standpoint to really criticize the pick.
Yeah, I think that they were already talking to, players on the team. Josh Allen, for example, was making, a lot of headway just by saying, it could have been Hutchinson. It could have been Travon Walker. He was excited about any one of those guys coming in and kind of adding in some help. We do have pick number 2 in as Roger Goodell is coming up to the podium. I think we can, softly say that this could be Hutchinson, but
maybe Thibodeaux. They've been really into Thibodeaux.
They have been, which is. So it is Aiden Hutchinson.
They got that pick in quick. So
they did get that pick in quick. But yeah, like you said, JJ, things were kind of brewing with Thibodeaux there. Just in the past 48 hours of being that pick, it was kind of hard to see, a guy like Dan Campbell, head coach of the Lions, passing up on a guy like Hutchinson, played at Michigan, going to the Detroit Lions. Like the storylines kind of write themselves sometimes, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it seemed like a lot of people, a lot of mocks were on Thibodeaux there, thinking that he would be the dude, that the Lions were high on him. But then I think right before the draft started, there were some reports that they were down to Hutchinson and one of the corners for that second pick. Maybe actually it might've been Icky as the other one with Hutchinson. So yeah, look, they went after the guy that was the consensus one, seemingly, around Heisman time. So, can't fault them obviously for this and them getting the T-Rex armed edge right there.
Yeah, and even with Hutchinson going at number 2, there was still some pretty decent juice on him when you were looking at it if you wanted to take a shot on it. So we got two edge rushers off the board, and this is gonna kind of dictate how the rest of this goes. As Houston is now going to be on the clock. If they do decide to keep their pick, and they'll be picking at number 3 with, just as many needs as the first 2 teams coming in. And they got a new head coach and Lovie Smith and a lot going on there. I want to make sure we're touching on the people in the comments. Chat has been blowing up. We appreciate you guys rocking along with us. Chardin, I believe, or Chardin, Polino asking about the stream, if it can be saved. And he'll be able to come back to it, or he or she. And yes, you will be able to come back to this stream. You guys will be able to watch it on YouTube after the fact, so you can get all the analysis. If you guys need to go on about your night or do something else, that you can come back later on tonight, tomorrow, and make sure you catch the stream. I appreciate that question. I'm sure many others had that. Shout out to Bethany Peters, who's coming in on the chat. Shout out to Ken Reed coming in on the chat. I think I saw Aaron as well, Aaron Rasmus. So we appreciate you guys rocking along with us, watching in on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Facebook. Guys, as we get ready to talk about the Houston Texans and the number 3 pick, I kind of want to talk about just the quarterbacks just for a brief minute, as I know they might not become relevant until later on this draft. But what are your thoughts about the quarterbacks here at the top? A lot's been made of Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett, but a lot of these teams are QB needy teams. We see that the Seahawks, they just traded Russell Wilson and really didn't get anything back from a QB standpoint. The Atlanta Falcons could use a quarterback potentially after seeing Matt Ryan go. JJ, you talked about Carolina with them swinging and missing on Sam Darnold last year. What are our thoughts about this weak QB class in general, and are any of these quarterbacks going to make an impact on day one?
Yeah, I can talk about it a little bit. I think that there's reason to not be bullish on each of these guys. Like you can pinpoint reasons as to why. I mean, Malik Willis, competition wise, it wasn't there. He wasn't even a very accurate quarterback in college, but the tools are there, right? He has the highest ceiling in this class, seemingly. And then from a fantasy perspective with Malik Willis, he's sort of that, not quite Lamar Jackson. I don't think we can say from a rushing standpoint mold. He's not fast like Lamar. He's more so just able to bulldoze guys, and he's really agile on the open field. So it's a little bit different. In terms of how he can utilize his legs, but he's going to be able to utilize them from a fantasy standpoint. And we know that we want those dual threat quarterbacks from a fantasy perspective. Kenny Pickett has some mobility too. We all saw the fake slide. Me, a Pitt alum, I was at that game, ACT champs. Let's go. He does have some mobility to him, but that's just sort of what we see from college quarterbacks these days, that they have at least some mobility to their game. So it's not necessarily like this point of differentiation for Kenny Pickett, but it is there. I mean, he can escape the pocket and he can still work in a scheme that needs some mobility at the quarterback position. The thing with Pickett is that, it's this Joe Burrow, Mac Jones syndrome where they didn't do anything throughout their collegiate career. But then they have this monster senior season. The difference with Pickett is that he's very old. Played a very long time at Pitt. At least he like the good marks are that he at least played for a while. Like he wasn't just like sitting there and then all of a sudden, played 2 years ago and was pretty mediocre and then played this past year and was really good. He played a long time at Pitt. I mean, he broke all of Pitt's passing records essentially. So at least he has that going for him, but you don't necessarily want quarterbacks coming out that late. They generally don't have great hit rates. Jim Sonis, Jim, pour some out for Jim not being here tonight. But, right. Jim talks about that at length all the time with his quarterback stuff. Is just, games started and games played is very important, but you don't want those games to just be old games, when these guys are older. Pickett, to me, the comp is generally that's thrown around. I agree with it, as Andy Dalton. I think that's what we're looking for. Maybe a little bit more mobile than Andy Dalton. But that's why I see Goodell's coming out on stage right now, so I can stop rambling. But I think that's why, people aren't as excited about Pickett going top 10 because he doesn't necessarily have that ceiling.
Wow, we do leave it to Houston, man. Lovie Smith coming in here and just doing things big off the top. I don't even know what the props were for this guy to go number 3, but Derek Stingley Jr., the cornerback out of LSU, has gone at pick number 3 to the Houston Texans. Lovie Smith already come in. We know he loves his defensive sets and loves his defensive guys that he can trust. And Derek Stingley was a guy who people were talking about it as being kind of like that shutdown corner. I believe this guy didn't allow a touchdown when he was on the field, and wasn't catching steam because all of these other things were coming to fruition. But now the draft has kind of changed on its head. Brandon, I was going to throw it to you to kind of talk about the Houston Texans in general, but what are your initial thoughts of this pick and kind of what Houston is doing as a franchise going forward?
I don't really know what they're doing. But no, this is a good pick. I started to see this mocked up a little bit more and more. And I mean, if you read as many pieces as you can, you're bound to find like some link of some player to some team. But I did see this one more and more as we got up closer to the draft. But Houston, they're such an outlier with their win total this year at 3.5. It is what it is. And while Stingley's going to help them this year, it's obviously sort of a rebuilding situation no matter what. They could have tried to protect Davis Mills when offensive tackle, but with a team that needs everything, you can't really go wrong. And I think for some of these teams, like the goal is just to have some of these players be relevant for a few years, because if you're picking these guys at the top of the draft and they're not on your team in 4 years, it didn't do you any good, no matter how good they are. So you got to build that culture up. Davis Mills, I think a lot of people liked what they saw from him last year, but I do have interest in their over at 3.5 wins. It's kind of hard to go under that. I have them projected out as about a 4.2 win team. So I think that once we can get into some win totals, at least look at maybe that over at 3.5.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And definitely it's always fun to get actions on these totals now that we have switched to a 17 game season, right? So I'm sure that's affecting the win total projections as well. As the New York Jets are on the clock and they have 2 picks in the first round. They're one of 8 teams that have 2 picks in the first round. I think we can potentially see another splash move here. There's still a lot of interesting pieces on the board, a lot of skill position players. We know that the Jets need help at the wide receiver position, but they, also are in talks potentially with Deebo Samuel as they struck out with Amari Cooper. They struck out with Tyreek Hill. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Jets are able to do with these picks. Jessica, I want to bring you in here just from a betting perspective with a guy like Stingley, who is able to go 3. I mean, somebody is paying off handsomely on this FanDuel Sportsbook for taking a shot on a guy like that. Were there any bets that you were looking at in these top 10 picks that can equate to something, or something that you monitor on your side from the betting perspective as these picks start to roll in?
Yeah, well, I'm not really a futures bettor, but I mean that honestly, the Texans picking the cornerback Stingley, that was not in my books as far as what I thought was going to happen. Honestly, if I was to lay some money, I would have picked a tackle. I mean, I liked Ikem Ekwonu. Honestly, I thought that would have been the way to go. However, they picked who they picked. Now we're looking at the Jets right here, and I mean, in my opinion, I mean, I don't want the Jets to get a good player, but here I am, rooting for them in a way, I guess, if they did. Right. I would say the smart thing to do is get a wide receiver, give Zach Wilson a weapon. And I think Drake London would be the way to go. I mean, he's physical. He's physical. He's silky smooth for his size. I mean, he is a former, as a former teammate, he kind of reminds me of Michael Pittman Jr. He's got that vibe. Okay. And, I just feel like he can create separation, and he can be what they need to be able to make their team more successful.
No, absolutely. I think that, these wide receivers, as they start to go off the board, they'll be fun to talk about, because it's kind of like they're like jack of all trades, master of none type of thing. Like, I feel like each wide receiver kind of offers their own bright spots and I guess their own, cons to for lack of a better word. So it'll be fun to start seeing where these guys land. The pick is in for the New York Jets. Want to shout out the people who are coming in to the chat. Pete's takes is likes that you're a Dolphins fan, Jessica, even though that we spelled dolphin a little bit differently there than I think the Miami Dolphins do, but always fun to have you in, Pete. And then Ken Reed, defense, talking about Chris Taskey. Let's see some trades. Yes, Chris, we would definitely love to see some trades here on night 1. Shake it up. That's what we're in for. And the Jets pick is in. They're celebrating, so they're definitely excited. We should see a decent move. I don't know. People don't get that excited about. I mean, maybe it was the highest guy on their board, but I think it's going to be a skill position player.
I just want to see one of these war rooms just like be so mad and angry,
devastated.
Like whenever they cut to them, like they're just so upset that they got this guy because they really wanted to get Stingley or something.
I feel like
Go ahead, Brandon.
I feel like it's got to be some sort of defense, and they'll go receiver at 10. I feel like they're a lock for receiver at 10. That makes a little bit more sense to me, but I love the call from Jessica where they're going to get a receiver. I think it's going to be at 10, so I'm leaning defense here. Maybe Thibodeaux.
But it better be Drake London if they do go wide receiver either here or 10. I've seen so many Garrett Wilson mocks to the Jets, which I get. Garrett Wilson's great. I just see Garrett Wilson as a very redundant piece to Elijah Moore, whereas Drake London really, really fits what the Jets need right now, more so than what I think Garrett Wilson would provide. I mean, Garrett Wilson's phenomenal. I would rather see a Garrett Wilson go 8 to Atlanta, where he can be the 1 and just kind of operate that way, and then Drake London complementing Elijah Moore really well. That's a great 1-2 punch if they were able to get Drake London.
I did see Sauce Gardner mocked here a lot too, so that it could be Gardner, which they were last in number fires adjusted defensive passing net expected points metric. So the worst pass defense.
That would be interesting because I know Sauce was projected to go to either one of these New York teams. I think the New York Post already had the applesauce headline up. And of course, Gdula, you predicting the future. They did get Ahmad Gardner there, Sauce Gardner. And Sauce, as I'm looking at my cornerback notes here, Sauce was actually the cornerback in the NCAA last year that did not allow a touchdown, or has not allowed a touchdown in his collegiate career. So definitely a shutdown corner there. The Jets, coming in and being able to make maybe not necessarily a skill position player as we see, but definitely with these two cornerbacks going off of the board early, an impact player, a guy who could come in and really just impact the defense there. What better way to get a guy like Zach Wilson help than, a defense on the other side of the ball that can kind of, shut things down for them, not allow points. And that way, Zach Wilson doesn't have to go out and put up a lot of points. Robert Saleh there being the head coach for the New York Jets makes a lot of sense for this pick. How are we feeling about this pick? JJ, I'll start with you.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. They need help in that secondary. I think looking forward to it, this next pick with the Giants, I think they're a lock to take an offensive tackle at this point. Probably go the Icky route. They need help there. They were all, as Brandon alluded to, they were in contention to get Sauce with that next pick. And so he's obviously not there. So I think that they're just going to go with best tackle available, which is probably Icky, but they can go in other directions. There's a couple other guys that they could pick, but I think this pick makes a lot of sense. The Jets have that number 10, which I do think they will. They've been tied to so many wide receivers this offseason. They were looking like they were gonna trade get Tyreek Hill, or they were trying to get Tyreek Hill. I don't know if they were in or not on Adams, but they've been tied to Deebo Samuel all week long, really the last couple of weeks.
Right.
So I do think that the Jets either are going to try to trade for a Deebo, but it sounds like the 49ers, there's a report today that the 49ers turned down a package that was equivalent to what the Dolphins gave up for Tyreek Hill. So, we'll see. I do think that the Jets, if they do not trade for a wide receiver, which is really Deebo, which would be the most relevant piece, I think they'd end up just getting a wide receiver with their next pick. So it makes sense to get the guy that was in higher in demand now. There's other wide receivers in this class they would probably feel fine with. There's a group of 4 of them, 3 of them at least, that you should feel good about. And so they're probably just waiting for that at 10.
Definitely. And offensive line just being, one of the most impactful positions. What do we make of these guys kind of falling here a little bit? Is the narrative changing? Are these guys just not as strong? I mean, Evan Neal was a guy who had been projected in the top 3 picks, early on, and we just haven't seen it come to fruition. I know that those offensive linemen do make a ton of difference, but we see 2 cornerbacks go off of the board before the offensive linemen.
I think it just speaks to how important it is to stopping, opposing passing offenses. It's crucial. If you look at any game, if you look at expected points or yardage, just anything that points to efficiency, teams with the better passing numbers typically win those games. And you can have a good passing offense, or you can try to stop those numbers. The run game, I know I'm not the first to say it, the run game is just not that important. So I think that you can't really go wrong investing in the secondary or the offensive line. I think that the read that I'm getting, and again, offensive line and secondary, not really my strong suits when it comes to projecting. I'm more about the skill position players on offense. But it seems like there's a solid set of about 4 tackles, but it seems like there was a little bit of a sharper drop off with the corners. So I think that maybe that had something to do with it, especially with the Jets being able to pick like here again at 10. But again, I think they're pretty much locked into a receiver there. I would be astonished if they don't go receiver. Houston picking again at 13 would give them another shot. So I think I can't really go wrong for these teams at the front, because they need so much.
Perfect. And let's talk about the Giants here as the pick is in. Just from an overall perspective, the Giants really were interesting last year with Kadarius Toney going off the board, and JJ's head exploding to a certain extent there with him. But he's already talked about being on the trading block. Just 1 year removed from that, and now you have the Giants coming in. They got pick number 5. They also have pick number 7. They have some needs. They got a new GM. They have a new head coach in Brian Daboll. They have a new defensive coordinator in Wink Don Martindale. A lot going on with the Giants. What are we expecting from this pick, JJ?
I think they're going to go offensive line because they need that help. I think that they want to get back to being able to utilize Saquon in a more relevant way. Hopefully he can stay healthy too. Anytime there's a regime change, you just have to feel you have to semi trust that the regime is an upgrade and knows what they're doing. And I think that you can feel pretty good that Brian Dable and what he can bring to the table is going to be a little bit more. You can feel a little bit more optimistic than what Joe Judge was doing there. So I do think they're going to go offensive tackle here. I think they should go offensive tackle here, partially because Carolina, as I alluded to earlier, picks next. And, I doubt there's a team maybe there's a team that would want to trade up to Carolina at 6, but if they don't, it's going to be tackle. It's my projection here. And then if that happens, then they'll still be able to get a guy that they would hypothetically want at 7. So we'll see what happens. I'm saying
possible. It's possible with the tackles though, because there's the 3 big ones. That they're guaranteed to get someone at 7. If there's someone they really like, and they don't necessarily have a tackle that they're in love with out of the trio, they might go someone else and then go a tackle at 7.
Excellent. And while we're waiting on the pick being in, as Roger Goodell's come up to the podium with somebody who I can only describe as a high school debate club member, who's very
what's going on here, man?
Very hyped up. I don't have the volume on, but this kid is very excited to get this pick in here. The Giants are going to be making their selection again. They're going to be picking at number 7, and then Carolina is where things can really get interesting here, as some things have been shaken up early. Carolina, they definitely, desperately need some offensive help to get on the board. And then we can get back to the Giants, Atlanta Falcons, Seattle Seahawks, and the Jets again to kind of close out the top 10 for night 1. Here we go. So the pick is in. It's going to be Kayvon Thibodeaux from Oregon there.
Call Brandon.
The edge. So
Brandon with the logic with the tackles there. I think that's probably what they were thinking. They might not have had Icky as the clear cut, and they probably had a tier. And as Brandon mentioned, they're going to be able to get that at 7 if they want to go that route. So it made a lot of sense to it's the same logic of going. If they did have the tackle that they liked, picking it over Carolina and then getting Sauce at 7, right? If you would have not gone 4, so makes sense.
Yeah, Giants 30th in pressure rate last year, according to Pro Football Reference. A team that has needs, but kind of a little bit of an outlier because we have win totals for the first few teams: 6.5 for Jacksonville and Detroit, 3.5 for Houston, 5.5 again for the Jets, and then 7.5. I mean, it's plus 135 for the over, minus 160 for the under, but not necessarily in the same exact tier, although they might have some quarterback situation that they got to figure out here with Daniel Jones. But again, that you never know what teams float out there to kind of get other teams off the scent of what they're really trying to do. But really interesting start to this with 5 straight defensive players. I think we're going to see a run on tackles here, though.
Yeah, five straight defensive players. We definitely have to go into stats and info to kind of see the last time that's been done to start off a draft. But as you and JJ both alluded to, Brandon, just the times have changed with the offense, the way the game is played, and how much it caters to the offensive side of the ball. So you need strong defenders on the other side to be able to kind of stop some of these guys. So this will be an interesting pick for the Carolina Panthers who come in here. Now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Carolina Panthers only have like 1 pick within the top 100 I was seeing. So definitely a position where they're going to have to make a splash play here because they're not going to pick again for a while. What's kind of the talks that you guys have seen around the Carolina Panthers? And I wanted to pull up the FanDuel Sportsbook odds as well for pick number 6.
I think we're looking at tackle. I know that I said that about the Giants was completely wrong, but I think that we're looking at tackle for Carolina. They could be going the quarterback route here, which would completely shift the way that everyone's viewing this draft. It's definitely at least in question, but I think that the way that they're viewing things and the way that they've talked about Sam Darnold and the way they've been linked to Baker and Jimmy Garoppolo, I think that the likeliest route for Carolina right now is that they either trade this, they get a tackle, and then if they go that route, then they will make some sort of deal to get Baker, to get Jimmy G, and have that competition / just use those guys as starters over Darnold this year. Because you have to think of it too. I mean, this really is a make or break year for Matt Rule. There's almost zero chance that he's going to make it through the season, let alone, just halfway through, if they're not competitive in some way. And I don't think that they will be, right? Like, this roster is not, I mean, the defense is okay enough. There's pieces there. You have pieces on the offensive side. It's just that they have not figured out quarterback whatsoever. And they've invested a lot in the quarterback position. I keep bringing this up, but like the way that they went about Sam Darnold was, like if you compare it to what Atlanta did with Marcus Mariota or what Pittsburgh did with Mitch Trubisky, the Steelers did not sign Mitch Trubisky for that much. It was all like an incentive driven deal. It's not like they gave up draft capital to get him. Whereas Carolina was locked in to utilize Sam Darnold and to use him. And that sunk them. There's a sunk cost involved there. And so they're just in a really, really rough spot right now as a result of that. I think it stems back from them passing on Justin Fields last year too. Not to say that Justin Fields is a lock to be great, but I do think that you got to throw those darts at quarterbacks as often as you can when the prospect at least looks better than the prospects do this year on paper, right? And so they could go quarterback here, who knows? But I do think that this is one of those inflection points in the draft. But I think that the safest bet to make here would be that they go with an offensive tackle like Icky or something.
Definitely. And we here in Chicago, JJ, are very happy that Carolina decided to pass on a quarterback there. So we'll take Justin and his upside for the foreseeable future. The Carolina pick is in. And guys, on the FanDuel Sportsbook, you can still make live bets on the draft. You can just go into the FanDuel Sportsbook and log in, and you guys can see the live drafts there. It skips 2 rounds. So right now it's in round 6. You can bet round 8, 9, 10. So there's definitely some traction there. We've talked a lot about Drake London possibly, being that pick for the Jets at number 10. Drake London is plus 210 right now. Yes, he is the favorite, but even getting 210, on the juice, that's got to be favorable, right, Jessica? We got Garrett Wilson at 300, who people thought was going to be the first wide receiver off the board. Jameson Williams at plus 340. So wide receiver going to the Jets is very favorable there at the number 10 pick.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's a great bet to put money on. I mean, why not? This is, it's what I mentioned earlier about what the Jets need. So I think at plus 210, I'd say go for it. And I'm excited to just see what the Panthers do right here. Just like JJ mentioned, a lot of things that I would have said as well. But you have definitely, they're going to get a tackle here, or let's make things crazy and they actually pick up a quarterback. But in reality, it's true. Round 4 is their next pick at 137. So there's just a lot of gap time in between. So it's just really going to see what Matt Rule is going to, come down to is decision making. Is it going to be the quarterback, or are they just going to try and fix their line?
Yeah. And interesting too. I see the people who are working behind the scenes for us at FanDuel, even getting involved in the chat with Matt Rule and Pickett reunited, as Matt Rule did recruit Kenny Pickett to Temple before he left on and left Kenny Pickett kind of hanging out to dry. That allowed him to transfer there to Pittsburgh. But that would be something. I mean, you gotta go about it and do something at the quarterback position, but maybe you can just make an impact play here and just figure it out outside of the draft, figure it out in free agency. We're getting the markets on the FanDuel Sportsbook locked up. So the pick is in with Carolina. We'll let this come in and kind of, talk about things as they stand. So right now, JJ, as we look at the board, best available when we're kind of trying to look ahead at these next couple of picks, like how is this shaping out in your mind with these next couple? We got Atlanta coming up. They need a lot of help, but definitely need help at wide receiver. They have probably one of the weakest wide receiver groups in the NFL and play in that division there in the NFC South, where, they pretty much are just building for the future. I don't see them competing. We got Seattle Seahawks that can do a lot, and we've already talked about the Jets. So how are you seeing this shape out on your end?
Yeah, I mean, I think the next 2 picks are going to be, I think we're going to go Icky, and then we're going to go Charles Cross probably to the Giants after that. And then once you get to Atlanta, you can go in a lot of different directions. Maybe they go like a Jermaine Johnson and they get an edge, or maybe they go offense and they go wide receiver, which if the Falcons go wide receiver, one thing that I wouldn't be shocked is if they opt to not go like a Drake London route, because Drake London is sort of a duplicative sort of asset similar to Kyle Pitts, where they need someone who can probably stretch the field a little bit better than Drake London can. And they might be a little bit more inclined to, and not only that, but the thing with Atlanta is that they're not winning this season. They're completely rebuilding. So they could honestly take a chance on someone like Jameson Williams, who's got that ACL, who might not play right away. I see the Panthers selection is in, so we'll let Ryan announce that one while I'm talking.
Yeah, we got tackle coming off the board. Ikem Ekwonu going there from NC State to the Carolina Panthers. Definitely getting a guy in the trenches to be able to shore up that offensive line. So, Brandon, I know offensive lineman, exciting, but with the win model, we can kind of talk about that a little bit. How does this shape out for you and what the Carolina Panthers are doing there?
So the way that I actually work on my win projections is I do leverage win totals from sportsbooks, specifically FanDuel Sportsbook, because historically very, very good baseline projections there, and then I manually adjust offense and defense overall with the assumption that I can kind of make some improvements based on personnel changes and how I sort of see things. But I actually bucket teams into different tiers. And so I'm not looking to sort of get into the minutia of, is this team 30th or 31st, that kind of stuff. It's more buckets. I still have the Carolina Panthers in the trash bucket offensively, but I can manually bump that up a little bit. But they're actually a really interesting team from a win total perspective. Their win total is 5.5 at FanDuel Sportsbook. The over odds -120. So kind of the expectation there. But I rate them as so when I run it through my simulations, they're about a 6.5 win team for me, which might sound a little bit high. But they're in 5 games, which I would determine to be within 3 points either way. Those are winnable games. Those are kind of coin flip games. They are 6-point underdogs or greater in 6 games, which definitely is a lot. But when we're talking about 5.5 wins, you can rule out 6 games, say those aren't winnable. But you have some coin flip games. You have some reason to think that Christian McCaffrey can be relevant. DJ Moore is one of my favorite players in the league because he's so impactful, and eventually he's going to score a touchdown or two. But honestly, I think that the over on a team like the Panthers is interesting because when you compare the way that I do things, obviously, is I'm running simulations. So these are game by game projections, and you have games against the Saints, who I'm very low on, the Falcons, who it's hard to be high on. So those are some winnable games there. And if the total's 5.5, I think it's a pretty easy mark to go over on.
No, definitely. And this was a team last year that made a lot. I mean, they were probably one of the youngest defensive units, as of last year with the starters, as they made a lot of plays in the 2021 draft to kind of make sure that they kind of shored up that defense. And we know the offensive pieces have been there with Christian McCaffrey when he's healthy, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson to a certain extent, if we can get back to 2020, Robbie Anderson of what he was. But this is a team that kind of, they just need to kind of get things right. So you shore up the offensive line a little bit. You hope that the defense comes back a little bit healthy, and then we figure out that quarterback position, and then we could be in play. So I think, getting ahead of the curve there, Brandon, on the win totals there, is we don't know what is happening with that quarterback position. If they were to make a splash play or just a play in general, I could see that market moving a little bit ever so slightly on them. Let's make sure. So we got the Giants pick at number 7. Giants pick is in. This is going to be their second one after taking edge there. So we want to make sure we know what they're. Yeah, after taking Thibodeaux there. Again, Brian Dable coming in here, offensive-minded head coach. Do we see an offensive pick happen with this second one?
Yeah. I think we're seeing tackle. We're going to see either Cross or maybe Neal get picked up here. It just makes too much sense. They fell to him. It's a really good start for the Giants if they go with either one of those guys, whether it's Cross or Neal. because they're sort of all in that bunched up tier that we were talking about earlier, seemingly. So, it's a really, really good start for them. They're getting two really impactful positions that they needed. And it's a good start to the non-Dave Gettleman era.
Right. And JJ, in that same vein, let's kind of talk about this from the macro sense of them not picking up Daniel Jones's 5th-year option, which was reported on earlier today that wasn't going to be happening. So now you're pretty much just shoring up the offense for what could potentially be for a future quarterback at stake, and possibly not Daniel Jones, or maybe he ends up balling out and getting franchise tagged. But there is some merit there for them to kind of build things in place so that when they do have a chance to bring in an offensive rookie quarterback, potentially next year or somebody else, they have it set in stone. And they do go tackle with Evan Neal out of Alabama. The pick was in. Evan Neal is there. He's coming up. He's going to do the handshake or hug with Roger Goodell, and we can touch on that tackle. So Charlie Cross still on the board, but Evan Neal does go there at number 7. If you guys had action on Evan Neal to go into the top, to go in the top 10, you're feeling good about that. Just missed the top 5 pick, but definitely some action there to be had on the FanDuel Sportsbook as picks are still rolling in. We still have number 10 available as Drake London. His odds have now moved to -125. So just, still the favorite, but the juice is moving ever so slightly. Still Garrett Wilson there sitting at 3-1, and Jameson Williams now at 6-1. As we wait for pick number 8 for the Atlanta Falcons to potentially be in if they don't move on to it, let's talk about Evan Neal and kind of him landing there. Brandon, I'll bring you in here with another tackle going off of the board to the Giants, who, people basically outside of New York, that have no reason to pay attention to this team, right? But I think that there's so many changes across the front with the, new head coach, new GM, new defense coordinator, and potential, these rookies coming in. So there's going to be a new look to the New York Giants here, who play in, probably one of the most competitive divisions in all of football, where you see a new person be the champion each year. What's your outlook on the New York Giants thus far?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good start for them with their draft with Thibodeaux and Neal. Both of those guys have peak positions of number 1 overall at NFL Mock Draft Database. A lot of these guys are going to have that, but I think any Giants fan out there has to feel pretty good investing where they did with edge rusher and offensive tackle. We talked about that. You want to get to the quarterback or stop the quarterback defensively, and you want to protect your quarterback offensively. Of course, they need to have a quarterback, and that's the conversation that we'll have over the next months and year for them specifically. But they were the worst adjusted pass offense in football according to Number Fire's metrics last year. That this is going to help them. 30th in pressure rate last year defensively, so Thibodeaux is going to help them. So it's a good situation for the Giants. Now I have them with a really easy schedule. I have them with the easiest schedule in football. I kind of rate them as like it's going to sound weird because their win total is 7.5, but I have them rated as about a 4.5 to 5 win team. But whenever you run it through with their actual schedule, they're closer to a 6.5 win team. So I'm still on the under there. So I have them about 63% likely to hit the under. The juice is, -160 on the under. So that's kind of the expectation anyway. So again, talent-wise, skill-wise, they're maybe going to be able to overperform because of what the schedule is based on how I view things. But 8 3-point games either way, a lot of coin flip games there. That could lead to a lot of volatility. So it's probably not a number that I would love, but I still would have a hard time thinking this is an 8-win team. And if I'm thinking of how this bet would lose for the Giants to win 8 games, I think if I had to pick, I'd probably bet the under there.
Fair enough. No, the under with the Giants, I think, you can all get it. It's hard to take an over with the Giants, even with the new look. So I think we can get a resounding yes on that and taking the under. Make sure you guys are on the FanDuel Sportsbook to look up all these future odds as the field has been set there for the conference and division winners, player props, season awards already. So make sure you guys are getting action there. We got the Atlanta Falcons pick is in. This is going to be an interesting one to see what they do and kind of if we see them take an offensive weapon to kind of, run with Marcus Mariota, who's right now projected to be the day one starter. I'm not sure what will happen in the months to come, but Atlanta is picking in. We got Arthur Smith there in year 2. He's kind of trying to make it his own. They shipped Matt Ryan off to the Colts, and they just, went out and got a playmaker in Kyle Pitts last year before that drafting cornerback AJ Terrell. So they've definitely, made some moves that are offense and defensive pieces for years to come. So with the pick being in at number 8, Jessica, what would you expect to see here from the Atlanta Falcons? Is I think they could be the first one to kind of shake up the wide receiver landscape.
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm seeing, or at least that's what they should be doing. Give Mariota another weapon to work with besides Kyle Pitts. So Drake London, Jameson Williams, I like them both. Let's get the wide receivers going. I'm excited to see it. It's time for one of them to be picked.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think definitely from just a team advantage it's exactly what they need to be able to win some games. Absolutely.
No, the Falcons pick is in. Roger Goodell is coming up to the podium, and it is wide receiver Drake London. JJ, I'm going to let you come in because this was the one person that you said they should not be going after because of his wide receiver profile. So why don't you talk to us about his wide receiver profile and kind of what this could mean for the Falcons and for Drake London?
Yeah, look, I think you could easily make the argument that Drake London is the best wide receiver in this class. I mean, he has the best age-adjusted profile, production profile among all wide receivers in the class. He had a breakout age as a freshman. He was 18 when he broke out. And he played alongside Amon-Ra St. Brown and Michael Pittman. And even after Michael Pittman went to the NFL, and he was a year younger than Amon-Ra St. Brown, in a lot of statistical categories, he played better on a per-game basis than Amon-Ra St. Brown. And we saw how good Amon-Ra St. Brown was for the Lions last year. So it's a trio of wide receivers where you got to question why they weren't just better in general. But, it's a trio of wide receivers that are very good, and Drake London was competing with them at a very young age. The comps in my model, the guys that he compares to most favorably in my model from a production standpoint, a size standpoint, the two guys that really popped out were T. Higgins and Mike Evans. That's what you're getting with this with a guy like London. There's some concern over the fact that he had a lot of his production on contested catches. But you can see him walking on stage right now. He's a monster. I mean, the guy is massive. He's an athlete, plays basketball as well. So it's one of those instances where you can see the contested catch. I got to get the basketball reference in there because you got to do that for all players.
That's you got to have that.
You have to, yeah. But the thing is, when you have an athletic profile like that, he's not necessarily a burner, but when you have the athletic profile like that, and you can see this right now on your television, I'm sure they're showing highlights, whatever station you're watching. But, when you have that athleticism, that ability, you feel a little bit better about his doing that against NFL corners and having those contested catches against NFL corners. I can tell you right now, in my prospect model, he's going to rank as the best wide receiver in this class. He's a 98th percentile wide receiver in my model, which is a very, very good rank. I mean, that's like a top 15-ish since 2011 kind of wide receiver. So he's going to be my wide receiver 1. Drake London is. Not only is he going to walk into probably 18 to 20 to 21, maybe even 22% of the team's targets this season, but you're looking at a scenario where they're going to likely try to upgrade the quarterback position next year, and he's going to get hopefully an upgrade at quarterback. So it's a great landing spot for a wide receiver. You now have these like massive towers to throw to, and Kyle Pitts and Drake London, which was the reason why I said maybe they don't go this route. But Drake London's a beast, man. I mean, my model, like just straight up, my model liked Drake London the most in this class pre-draft. It's really hard analytically for a model to not love him the most pre-draft. But looking at it post-draft as the wide receiver 1, he's now, we needed some clarification within this from today to see who the wide receiver 1, if there would be a consensus wide receiver 1 for fantasy purposes. And I think we got it. I think it's Drake London.
Yeah, and Drake London, I just had to go back and check because I was looking at it. I made a selection for him to be the first wide receiver selected. He was plus 250 earlier today. And for him to go at the number 8 pick, he was plus 300. There was a lot of traction brewing with the Atlanta Falcons being linked to Drake London. So if you are on top of these beats and on top of these narratives and just putting a little action on it, it's hard to trust everything that's going to come to fruition, but we have seen a lot of things being talked about and them come to fruition on night one already. We try to parse through what is smoke and what is actually gonna come to fruition, but it's always fun. Brandon, as we kind of the first wide receiver off the board, so we can talk about DFS perspective, we can talk about season long. I mean, even the dynasty guys, as I'm looking at my Twitter feed here with the dynasty column and tweet deck going on, people are already talking about what this means for his stock and rookie draft. So what's your outlook on Drake London in general?
Yeah, I feel it's going to feel like I'm copying JJ's notes here, but T. Higgins is my number one comp in my prospect model for Drake London, tied with Michael Floyd, AJ Green, Michael Pittman, Brian Edwards, Mike Evans, number 6. So, I mean, that's a pretty good list there. And the thing from London is that we saw him used in different ways at USC, despite that big body. He's got the contested catches, but he's not just a deep threat. So he's got a little bit of versatility, which I think is really going to come into play. And as JJ was also throwing out, his target share is 18, and then he kind of ramped it up 19, 20, 21, 22%. I was going through looking at who I could bump down, and it's like I can bump down anyone but Kyle Pitts in terms of the market share. I got up to 22% for London, and I feel like that's maybe a little conservative even if they really go the Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf route and just sort of give half the targets to Kyle Pitts and Drake London. So, I mean, I think that he's in a great spot to produce right away. If Jim were here, he would definitely be talking up Marcus Mariota and his ability to get the ball to Kyle Pitts and Drake London. So I think there are going to be a lot of weeks in DFS where Drake London, somewhere in like that low 6,000 range, maybe a little bit of a shootout situation where we're in on Drake London is one of the better sort of mid-range plays from a high volume standpoint in DFS.
Yeah. I also have a projection for him that I threw in there. I was sort of anticipating them going wide receiver, so I had it sort of baked in already, but if I have him at a 20% target share, he's looking at about 121 targets, about 79 receptions, 814 yards, 5-ish touchdowns. I mean, he's looking like a wide receiver 4 in fantasy football, which I know sounds bad. Like that just seems bad on paper, but realistically, for a rookie wide receiver from a projection standpoint, and the fact that the wide receiver position just has so many players. I mean, it's very, very deep. When you look at other wide receivers sort of like that are ranked around that from a projection standpoint, you're getting into guys like Gabe Davis, even potentially. I mean, he's a little bit higher, but Kadarius Toney or Marquis Brown. I mean, there's just a lot of good talent that are just a little bit above that, a tier or two above where Drake London would necessarily be. Obviously, this is just in the moment sort of projection, and things can change and will change. But I'm very, very bullish on everything Drake London. My fear is that everyone's going to be that way. And so you might not get the right kind of value for him because look, let's be honest here. Atlanta's offense is not strong, right? Like Marcus Mariota is, I don't mind Marcus Mariota. I think that he's a fine enough replacement level quarterback, but they're likely to be fairly run heavy with Mariota. And then also, they're just not going to score that many touchdowns. So from a passing touchdown standpoint, there's just not that much to go around within this offense. So, London projecting for 5, maybe 6 touchdowns, despite his size, as you're seeing on your screen right now. It seems low, but I think it's realistic just given the offensive situation.
Yeah, and again,
Again,
it feels like I'm copying JJ's notes here on Drake London, but I had him at 128 targets, 920 yards, but 4.8 touchdowns, because whenever you're building out projections, it's always important to build something to a baseline. So you set your team expectations. Make sure you're not actually projecting a team for way too many touchdowns, but you do that, you kind of divvy things up the way that touchdowns are normally distributed. And, you can manually bump up someone like a Kyle Pitts, who's due for some touchdown regression, obviously, or Drake London, because they're bigger bodies. But realistically only so many touchdowns to go around. And what you're looking at, the difference of like a wide receiver 3 to a wide receiver 2 is not necessarily the yardage and the volume. It's who's scoring those touchdowns to kind of wiggle up the ranks. So again, just echoing what JJ said, I think it's really, really easy to be excited about Drake London, but not necessarily to the point that we're projecting him to be like this year's Jamar Chase just because of the offense.
No, that's fair, and this is going to be one to monitor for rookie drafts, especially for those people who play Dynasty or get after it with the rookie drafts, because people are going to overhype Drake London with him just being the first wide receiver off the board. But there's still so many fantastic landing spots that are left, that some of these, elite elite enough wide receivers, elite for this draft class, can go, that can make a viable impact. So that's going to be fun to get after. We do have the Seattle Seahawks. Their pick was in. They did pick Charles Cross there from Mississippi State. So they are, Seattle Seahawks are taking their time. They're going to, whatever they decide to do at the quarterback position will come to fruition, but they are going to, shore up the trenches here a little bit first, as they do take Charlie Cross. And now we have, kind of a run on tackles where it was the defensive players that were going early. JJ, how do you feel about this pick?
Makes a lot of sense. They're not needing to really, I don't think they needed to force the quarterback position in this draft at 9. I just don't think it was necessary. So I like the pick. You can always use tackles. You can always use offensive linemen. So yeah, he's part of that tier that we kept talking about earlier. So they got him and and he fell to him. And then now we're going to the Jets. I mentioned earlier, I hope it's not Garrett Wilson, because I don't think Garrett Wilson's the right fit alongside Elijah Moore. And I'm a huge Elijah Moore fan. I think Jameson Williams makes a ton of sense at 10. If they want to go that route, because realistically, they aren't probably going to be that competitive this year. They still have Corey Davis there that can be a 2, alongside Elijah Moore. And so, they don't need Jameson Williams necessarily contribute right away. And then imagine him just being that spark, maybe 5 games into the season or so. And they could really stretch the field. I mean, talk about separation. You have Elijah Moore and Jameson Williams there. That could be pretty awesome. So I kind of hope that they go the Jameson Williams route here at 10, because I think it's just, you don't get enough of that like length necessarily with Garrett Wilson, and that acceleration with Garrett Wilson like you would with a Jameson Williams. But I mean, Garrett Wilson's still very, very good. I'm just thinking more in terms of just general fit.
No, absolutely. And we will have the pick come in soon, as the Jets are on the clock. There'll be a lot to be made of that pick. I wanted to, Jessica, I'll bring you in just real quick, as we have the sportsbook going strong here. And so we got, just looking forward, we got position 12 and position 13. I wanted to kind of talk about position 13, because I do think we could see a potential wide receiver end up there with the Houston Texans pick that could, be helpful for Davis Mills and company there. Wide receiver to go there is plus 250. That is the 4th highest odds. They got edge again at plus 170, offensive lineman plus 250, and then safety as well. So basically, offensive lineman, safety, or wide receiver, you're getting the same odds there. Long shed at cornerback and quarterback at 6-1 and 6.5-1. Any leans there that you would have, Jessica, for this team? As I've seen, wide receiver is one of their needs, so there is some juice there with the 250.
Yeah, just like you said, it's what they need. So if they're gonna go, was the option for George Pickens up there?
So yeah, right now we just have positions.
Just positions. Okay.
Yeah, with the market how it is, but yeah, George Pickens would have been an amazing value pick when you're talking about the odds, getting him at 13, because he was projected to go later on in the first round, if not day 2.
Yeah, definitely. I like him, and just I think it's so hard to. There's so many wide receivers here that I'm like, well, it's who are they going to pick? But then things can happen. But Jahan Dotson is kind of another guy that I really like. I think he actually may be he has one of the best hands out there as far as one of the options for a wide receiver. Now I know he's a little bit further down. He's probably going to be picked a little bit later. But he's someone that stood out to me as a wide receiver that you could get late in the game,
Absolutely.
late in the picks. He was something that I really Yeah, I would just have to say that'd probably be just what I'd say from a betting perspective. It's so, this is something I'm way more of a games and sides and totals kind of girl.
Right.
Telling me to hear futures on who we should pick as in the draft, but it's what the Texans need, and so either way they should be good in picking a wide receiver.
Absolutely. And they're going to have to, their options just dwindled by one. They're going to have to take Garrett Wilson off of their big board as he does go number 10 to the New York Jets. So the New York Jets do get a wide receiver. We'll see if they're still in the Deebo Samuel running, but that probably is unlikely with them using the pick here. But Garrett Wilson comes in from Ohio State, definitely going to be an impact player as of early. And JJ, before I bring you in, Brandon, I wanted you to touch on this. I was waiting to see if they would pick a wide receiver, because I wanted you to talk about what this means for Zach Wilson. I mean, they are investing in this kid, getting him pieces, getting him weapons. They have a solid young core there in New York that they can, compete with the, Miami Dolphins and Patriots being in that same division. They're trying to build their own unit there. So what's your outlook for Garrett Wilson, and maybe in turn for Zach Wilson as we look into season longs later this year?
Yeah, so for Garrett Wilson, his top comp in my model is Jerry Jeudy, which is kind of high praise, but it also probably depends on how you view Jerry Jeudy, because Jerry Jeudy, very speedy, goes, kind of a little bit all or nothing. I think part of that has been quarterback play related, but I think Wilson's going to have a little bit of that himself. I just realized I'm wearing the same hoodie in these videos. It just threw me off.
That's your FanDuel attire.
It's a comfy hoodie. But yeah, I think that I'm really interested to hear what JJ has to say about Wilson, because I had a hard time really picking my favorite receiver from the class, and I know that with London going early, he's going to get as many targets as he can really handle. So that's not quite what I'm getting at. It's more of a talent perspective situation. But for me with Wilson, there's a lot to like, and I think that he's going to make a lot of impact plays. He does rank out pretty highly for me. I'm excited to go in there and project him out within this offense. It's going to pain me a little bit to bump down Elijah Moore if I have to, but hopefully there's enough I can bump down otherwise. But yeah, for me with Wilson, I'm maybe not his biggest fan. So Ryan, any thoughts for you on the quarterback for the Jets right now, and what you project for him this year?
Yes, I will talk about that. I do want to say that we did have a trade. So for those of you in chat who are asking for trades, we do have a trade. New Orleans has moved up to the number 11 pick. They have traded with the Washington Commanders to do so. I don't see the details of that pick, but it will now be Saints picking at 11, then Vikings, Texans, and Baltimore to follow.
This has to be Jameson Williams, right? Like this, you have to think this is Jameson Williams, because they're jumping ahead of the Vikings, who have been tied to Williams. Williams is getting so much love. He's a great, like, how good of a compliment is that to Michael Thomas, right? Like, right. Jameson Williams makes a ton of sense at this pick. I can't imagine they traded up to get Chris Olave, who, could play a very similar role, but, trading with the Commanders. The Commanders were also a team that could have gone wide receiver in the, at that 11 spot. So it's good for Terry McLaurin for now. But I just, you have to think that the Saints are probably infatuated. A team is infatuated with Jameson Williams' upside, and they know that Minnesota's drafting next, and they might get him. But back to Garrett Wilson. I liked Garrett Wilson a lot. He was my pre-draft wide receiver 1 because of projected draft capital. And I think he's one of the safest bets in this class. That's really the main reason why I had him my wide receiver 1. Post-draft, I'm going to flip. Right now, I have my wide receiver 2 and Drake London at wide receiver 1 because they were, in the same tier, very close pre-draft anyway. And Drake London looks better in my model. But Garrett Wilson right now, 97.5th percentile in my model. If you look at his production profile across the board, really, really strong. The other thing with Garrett Wilson is he played with Chris Olave, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and he also outplayed Jameson Williams when Jameson Williams was at Ohio State. So what we could see here is Garrett Wilson, if they do, I mean, I have no idea if they're going Jameson Williams here, but we could see Garrett Wilson go right before Jameson Williams in this actual NFL draft when Jameson Williams couldn't beat him out at Ohio State, which is part of the reason why he transferred to Alabama, because he didn't want to play with 3 first-round picks, which is totally understandable, right?
Right.
So Garrett Wilson, though, looks better in my model because of that competition. So that's another reason why, he's in that 97th to 98th percentile. I did make a projection for him. It did ding Elijah Moore a little bit, a couple percentage points from a target share perspective, but he can still get in that 22-ish range and still be fine enough. But this does hurt Elijah Moore. I mean, we shouldn't sell it a different way. I mean, it's not a good thing for Elijah Moore because Garrett Wilson is just as good of a prospect, at least in my model, as Elijah Moore is. And so, Wilson, though, it came out that he was in the wide receiver, like 50 to 60 range. 57 was his actual wide receiver rank in projections. I have him at 715 yards and 4 touchdowns this year. A lot of these wide receivers, unless they go to a place like Green Bay where it's wide open, maybe Kansas City as well, probably not going to be wide receiver 3s or better. So it's not a terrible projection for Wilson, given the fact that he's playing on a Jets team that, struggled at times last year with Zach Wilson. So at least they're giving Zach Wilson a piece, another weapon that he can utilize there. I love Garrett Wilson as a player. Question the fit a little bit, but it's fine. I mean, both of these guys, both Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson, can play everywhere. That's the other thing with Garrett Wilson, is that in 2020, he played a lot in the slot. He primarily played as a slot guy. And then in 2021, he moved more to the outside, really, really productive in the slot. They do have Braxton Berrios there, but I could see them utilizing Garrett Wilson right away in the slot with Corey Davis and Elijah Moore playing the perimeter. So that's another reason why he could see a little bit more volume just in general, because he's going to see some softer coverage there.
Just out of curiosity, JJ, we're projecting out because I think this will, season-long market shares aren't, you don't copy and paste those week to week for DFS, but where did you end up with the target share split between Moore, Davis, and Wilson? Because I think you could kind of spin it a lot of different ways. So I think that might be enlightening to see how you landed there.
Yeah. So, the way that I sort of view rookie target shares is that a baseline like later first, maybe second round rookie, probably around the 15% range just based on history. But if it's this high of a pick, then he's likely good. There's talent there. The model says he's talented. So you can bump that up a little bit, right? And then you have to look at the competition within that offense. And, I'm not someone who talks about the too many mouths to feed argument very often. But there is a ceiling component to the too many mouths to feed argument. Like if you had a team with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, and I'm about to just say the LSU team from a few years ago, but if you have a team with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, and just loaded with weapons, there are too many mouths to feed. Not all of them can have a 25% target share. So, you have to look at it from that perspective as well. We don't know if Garrett Wilson's going to hit or not. So, it's sort of just playing off of historical baselines for rookies and then sort of going up and down based on how talented they are, where they get drafted, all that kind of stuff. I settled at 17.5% for Garrett Wilson here in year one. Elijah Moore still at 21%, Corey Davis at 15%. So, I do think we're going to see a lot of 11 personnel with those 3 on the field. It's a really good trio. Let's be honest. It's a strong trio of wide receivers. Elijah Moore, a lot of promise. But let's see if the Saints get Jameson Williams here. I think it just makes too much sense. If they don't, I'm a terrible analyst.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get the pick in. This will be an interesting one. I got to remember that Twitter likes to spoil things for you before they actually come to fruition. So I haven't seen it official, but they'll put it up. And Brandon, to answer your question ever so quickly as the picks coming in, I do think that I will be interested in Zach Wilson in some season-long leagues and maybe even best ball leagues, to take late. If we can, get ahead of that, if the overall mindset about him is, that he has weapons and everybody takes his weapons, but they don't want to take the quarterback. So I think there could be some interesting stacks that you could make with Zach Wilson in best ball drafts as we get to that point. And also would love taking him as a, kind of a streamer, late round quarterback hashtag to do for season-long drafts.
Yeah, I'm ready to tilt guessing wrong with Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson in my stacks this year.
Absolutely.
Say the pick.
So we're waiting for the pick to begin. We got Tony Gonzalez up there with Austin Eckler, and they got some Chiefs and Chargers antics, it looks like, but they will be talking about the pick who's coming in. I've seen a couple people talking about possibly Malik, but I don't think that's a pick. There's another wide receiver that's being talked about with this pick other than Jameson Williams. So this will be a fun one, and I'm ready to break it down with you guys. As we have this time, guys, I just wanted to remind you, we got some fun contests that are going along. I think our producer Andrew can throw up that QR code for you guys. If you scan that QR code, you can get, after entering in for an NFL jersey of your choice, you can also enter in to get $100 in FanDuel credits. So make sure you guys are taking advantage of that, either by the QR code, hitting the description on the YouTube chat, or just following along with us on Twitter as we are talking about that. Guys, it's the day one live stream here at FanDuel, powered by FanDuel and Number Fire. We appreciate you guys coming in. Make sure you get your questions in. We want to make sure we're touching on things as they happen with your team. So if you got comments, if you got questions, we're here to take those. And with the pick being in, JJ, you ready for this? It's wide receiver Chris Olave. So two Ohio State boys.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy. I love Chris Olave. I think Chris Olave is incredibly talented. He can stretch the field. He's one of the better players down the field in this class, super fast as well. I'm just surprised that it wasn't Jameson Williams, only because Jameson Williams has been gaining so much steam over the last, couple of weeks, few weeks. But Chris Olave is very, very good. Matt Harmon of Reception Perception and over on Yahoo, he charts wide receivers. He had Chris Olave as the best route runner in this class. His production profile is great. The only ding that I would give Chris Olave analytically is that he's not an early declare wide receiver. He did play his full 4 years at Ohio State, and there is signal analytically to wide receivers leaving early and being better fantasy assets, when they do leave early. And so, again, you look at this Ohio State team, two other first-round wide receivers that he was playing with. He did play ahead of Jameson Williams, but he was a year older, so he was a senior to him. But overall, really good profile, super fast, can get down the field, great route runner, very, very solid player. Do I think that he has an insane ceiling from a fantasy perspective, from a dynasty angle? I think he's more of a wide receiver too, from a ceiling perspective. I think Garrett Wilson is sort of the same way, to be honest with you. Whereas Drake London has that true alpha ability. I don't know if that's going to necessarily be there for Chris Olave, but I mentioned it before this pick was made that they're probably trading up for a wide receiver because Minnesota's next. And they needed a guy who could really stretch the field competently across from and with Michael Thomas. And they got that. They got that guy. It just wasn't Jameson Williams, who I think is the better separator down the field and speed. He's faster than Chris Olave, but Chris Olave is a very, very good wide receiver.
And it'll be interesting to kind of look at this from years to come, because I know that we had these wide receivers who were just all just in talks, right? I mean, you got Garrett Wilson, Olave, and Jameson Williams all having ties to Ohio State. I think that all of these guys were, going to be going around in the same vicinity, and potentially, we have I think somebody in chat, Mr. Scampers, who's coming at it on YouTube, talking about the Saints must have either wanted either OSU wideout, traded up after Wilson went. This could have been just a nerves thing for them, as they had the 16 pick. They did pick again at 19, but you got teams like the Houston Texans, you got the Philadelphia Eagles selecting before them. Maybe they thought that those guys weren't going to be there, but I think they for sure, love Chris Olave enough to be able to give up 2 picks in the top 100, 3 picks in the top 120 of this draft to be able to get him. And they probably weren't high on Jameson to begin with, because he probably would have been there at their 16 pick.
I'm sure they're talking about this on television. I don't have, mine's muted, but Chris Olave, also an Ohio State guy, playing with Michael Thomas, also an Ohio State guy. So we got that connection as well. So I'm sure that Michael Thomas will be pleased. But yeah, I mean, I also plugged this into my model, and I'm kind of shocked by this, but Chris Olave actually is slightly better because of this draft capital than Garrett Wilson in my model, which I didn't think was going to happen, because everything works within draft capital within this model. And then it, looks at production and looks at all these other factors. Garrett Wilson was the number one wide receiver going into this draft because of projected draft capital. And Chris Olave was projected to go, 20th overall. Him going one spot away from Garrett Wilson means the model just objectively liked Chris Olave basically better than Garrett Wilson without draft capital. With this draft capital in now, it's just clear that it just barely, I mean, they're both 97, 98th percentile wide receivers, but he did get an edge over Garrett Wilson. And I'm honestly kind of shocked by that.
Yeah, Olave's tops for me now too.
Nice.
Yeah, I do want to touch on that real quickly as we move on with the draft. Pick number 12 is in. It is not going to the Minnesota Vikings. It is going to the Detroit Lions, who have moved up. They traded the number 12 pick and a second round pick, the number 46 pick. They received the number 12 and a second round, the number 46 pick. They traded their pick of number 32 to move up and others to move up here to draft at the number 12 spot. So the Detroit Lions making headway. We already have 2 draft day trades on night 1 before we even get to pick 13. So if you took the over bet on whatever the trades were, I'm sure it was set at maybe 2.5. That's probably going to hit, as we already have 2 already. Even 1.5, you're feeling pretty good about that. The line selection is in. I did want to talk about the wide receivers just in general and how we rank them, but let's see what this pick ends up being here as the Detroit Lions are on the clock. Roger Goodell is up there reading. Guys, appreciate you guys on YouTube who are coming in with us here in the chat. Make sure you get your questions in. The Lions made the pick, and they go after Jameson Williams at number 12. They trade up to get him a guy who is going to fit in nicely with what the Detroit Lions want to do. They're going to have him and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they're going to have TJ Hawkinson, and the quarterbacks have to be biting at the chops to get a chance to be able to play with this group now. DeAndre Swift in the backfield. I mean, the Detroit Lions are making some noise. They're making us here in Chicago feel pretty uneasy. So with Jameson Williams going, we're going to have an overall conversation. We're going to talk about Jameson Williams being here to the Detroit Lions, but I also want to talk about, with this run on wide receivers, where are we ranking them when it comes to these landing spots? Because we do, we got Drake London who went first, but as we kind of alluded to, these landing spots were going to be making a difference. I mean, Jameson Williams coming to this situation with Detroit is going to be definitely exciting. You got Olave with the Saints, regardless of how you feel about him. If Michael Thomas isn't healthy, or he's kind of on the fritz with the franchise in general, he could just be peppered with targets from Jameis Winston. So I am curious to get your thoughts on Jameson Williams as a whole, and then also with these wide receivers. JJ, I'll start with you.
Yeah, look, I think that the wide receiver run was semi-predicted. You had a lot of edge guys that went, and these tackles that went in the top 10, and then all of a sudden you hit a lot of teams that needed wide receiver, and then we're seeing teams trade up to get them, but and a lot of capable wide receivers, right here. The other thing I want to point out is what I talked about at the start of the stream with the wide receiver position, where there are really, really solid wideouts in this class. It's a fairly flat class. I said, I think there's like 8 of them that I would go where I feel really good about them. And then you start to get into some question marks, but it could also be that, there's a lot of confounding factors here where you have what we've seen with like Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, and teams not wanting to pay up for them. Right. And they want to have that 5th-year option, that flexibility for wide receivers on their rookie deal. That's one reason. But also, I do think that there's a drop-off from like these guys that have true like wide receiver 1 ceiling, not from a fantasy perspective, but from like a real football perspective in this class and in this draft, where probably ends around like Jahan Dotson, Sky Moore in that area, George Pickens in that area. But after you get, after that, you get into like Christian Watson, where there's just a lot of question marks about Christian Watson. You get into these other wide receivers, David Bell, where there's a ton of question marks about David Bell. So I think that it's a combination of, it is a flat class, but there is a clear cut, top 8 or so wide receivers, I think, that teams want to get in on. And then also they want to have these wide receivers on their rookie deal and have that 5th-year option. I think that's the main reason we're seeing the wide receivers go where they're going right now.
Brandon, what say you about these wide receivers, and how are you ranking them yourself when we talk about these landing spots? And not only that, but I mean, Ohio State going back to back on wide receivers in some way, shape, or form with the connection here is absolutely incredible. So talk to us, Brandon, about what you're seeing with these wide receivers in general.
Yeah, so if I were like a film analyst, I think I would put Jameson Williams number one. He doesn't rate out there for me with my prospect model. I think he's going to be. I got my projections I'm working on. I'll have to plug in the prospect model, but I have him, in that tier. And I think the sort of the theme this year is just tiers, right? And we're seeing where certain teams had certain players, and I maybe didn't have it ranked quite this way myself. I would have Drake London a little bit lower, but it is what it is. And I think the real situation here for me is that I am good with a lot of these landing spots, aside from maybe Wilson for the Jets. Just from a volume standpoint, it's going to be hard to project him for a ton of volume. So for me, I think I would probably for 2022, if I'm looking at this from a redraft or like a DFS standpoint, the guys I'm probably going to have most exposure to out of these receivers here going to be London. And then when Jameson Williams comes back, sounds like he's trending pretty quickly, which speaks to how quickly, how far we've come with ACL injuries. Once he's back on the field, I'm going to have a hard time staying away from that. So I'm really high on Williams here once he's healthy. It's just kind of hard to knock any of these, really. I'm kind of good with all of them.
No, that's fair. I mean, these guys are going to be this is going to be the talk right now of the draft as it stands on what to do with these wide receivers and the draft capital that they received so early on. And as we started off with no skill position players to kind of kick off the draft. That's all we've been seeing as of late, as the pick number 13 is in for the Philadelphia Eagles, and they come in with a lot at stake here. They've moved up here. They need to make a splash play here. They need wide receiver help desperately as well. I mean, you look at their wide receiver room outside of Devonta Smith. I mean, they cannot roll out Jalen Reagor, who is a failed first-round wide receiver pick, Quez Watkins. They need some help desperately, but they also, they have a lot of interesting things that they can do with their pick. So that'll be interesting to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles.
Look, low key, a huge winner from this draft already from a fantasy perspective is Devonta Smith, a huge winner, because the Eagles now, it seems like there was a top four from like a real football, from a draft capital standpoint. And then, Treylon Burks was getting a lot of love in fantasy circles because of his ceiling and his potential ceiling, which is understandable. And I think Burks is going to go today, maybe late teens into the 20s. But the fact that we just had that wide receiver run means that Philly is likely not, I think they just moved up to get this pick, right? Just a little bit. They're probably going to get Jordan Davis, right? Because Baltimore would be next. And I would assume that's the direction that they're going. But, with the Eagles not being able to get one of those four wide receivers, I bet you if Jameson Williams was on the board, Philly would have gotten him. That's my guess.
I was hoping for that. So then we'd have like Alabama North with Hurts, Smith,
with Devontae and Jameson Williams. But this is huge for Devonta Smith. I mean, the Eagles were in the market for a wide receiver. They've been tied to some of the trades that have gone down for these stud wide receivers, and they're not going to walk away from the first round, at least right now, with one of those guys, one of those like stud guys that would just potentially supplant Devonta Smith as the wide receiver one, or at least be very close to him. Now you're looking at a guy like Treylon Burks. You're looking at Jahan Dotson, who, I like Dotson a lot. I just don't think he profiles as a one. So it's almost a really, it is a very, very good situation for Devonta Smith stemming from this from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, this is also interesting as the wide receiver group is kind of dwindling for some of these wide receiver needy teams as of late. The Green Bay Packers, what are they going to do? Are they going to leave another draft with a high profile pick, not adding help to what Aaron Rodgers, the $50 million man, is going to be making, sending away, Devontae Adams and even Marquez Valdes-Scantling to a certain extent. They got, well over 225 vacated targets that are going to be missing there. And I don't think you can fill them with Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard and company.
Here's the really interesting thing that's going on right now because of these wide receiver picks. Like, we're not, these top 4 guys, none of them fell to the 20s, right?
Right.
What we're probably potentially going to see is now George Pickens, who has some off the field stuff that people are concerned about. Maybe Pickens goes in the late first now. Jahan Dotson, who seemed like more, I think his over-under is close to like 30, right? Because the Chiefs were picking around there. We could even see Sky Moore go in the first round now, right? So all of a sudden, from a dynasty standpoint, a rookie draft standpoint, and Brandon and I love us some Sky Moore, but from a dynasty standpoint and from even a redraft standpoint, you're getting a situation where you're just going to have more usable rookie wide receivers in fantasy because of these teams trading up, because of these teams getting these wide receivers where they did, which is good if you had, a late first, let's say, in rookie drafts, because now you're going to get someone potentially very, very good.
Yes, and anybody who's holding a ticket right now for the over on wide receivers in the first round is feeling very good about themselves. As I know that was over 5.5, even at 6.5. I think we can even see that really come to fruition. The pick is in for the Eagles here at pick number 13. Guys, if you're following along on the FanDuel Sportsbook as well too, you can still make selections for pick number 16, pick number 17, pick number 18. And it doesn't necessarily mean the team that currently is slotted for that has to make that pick. It could be just picking the position. If it goes in that slot, you will win that bet. And the selection is in. It is the defensive nose tackle there, Jordan Davis from Georgia, going to the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Philadelphia Eagles do get a trench pick here in Jordan Davis. They trade up to do so. And Brandon is already laughing. So Brandon, the floor is yours to talk about this pick and kind of what it means to you.
Oh, it just felt like such a typical Baltimore Ravens pick at 14. So it seemed kind of inevitable. But yeah, I mean, Philadelphia making some things happen, shifting things around, making it a little bit hard to track my draft picks. We get the picks in like way later as to what actually shifted. So kind of all over the place with that regard. But yeah, pretty interesting team here. 8.5 wins is their total. But the juice minus 130 on the over. So kind of a lot to be expected here. Or, I mean, if a 9 wins is a lot for a team. But, kind of a lot in that regard for the Eagles. And again, once again, I kind of have them with a little bit of a weak schedule in the NFC East personally. A lot of coin flip games with 8, 9 games where they're favored. Just 1 game where I would have them considered as a 6-point underdog. So there are a lot of winnable games. I think they're going to be a pretty volatile team. So one of those teams that could maybe, go, I guess 6-11 now. I'm still not used to adding up to 17 there, but one of those teams that could kind of fall a few games off of that total, but definitely could spike up if Jalen Hurts gets things going.
Nice. And yeah, we'll wait for Baltimore to make their pick at number 14. If they do choose to keep this pick, which I think that they will, and we'll be interested to see what they make. Okay, so we're pretty much to the halfway point, almost to the halfway point here of the draft, and there'll definitely be some fun storylines to talk about as we get into some of the playoff contending teams with the Chargers and the Steelers and the Packers and Cowboys and Kansas City later on. So a lot of fun stuff to still break down, guys. If you're still rocking along with us and haven't done so, go ahead and hit that like button. It does a lot for us there when you hit that like button and you subscribe to the channel as well. We got a lot of live content that comes out every week for you guys, so we want to make sure that we have you covered on all sports, but especially NFL, as we're talking day 1 of the NFL draft here with you guys. As we wait for this pick to come in, just want to get some overall thoughts on what's standing out to us from the draft here. We've had a couple trades, couple people moving back. And still we haven't even, I don't think we got to the spots where we could see people trading up to kind of get in and make their pick on what it is. So a little bit of the madness here to start early. What are the overall thoughts here of this draft right now that wasn't expected to be exciting, I guess, so to speak, but has been nothing but exciting to start it off?
I want to see a quarterback go. I'm curious how that's gonna unfold, because you have teams upcoming here in Houston who maybe goes that direction. Washington, doubtful they go in that direction, but they could. And then New Orleans with that pick right before the Steelers pick. So I think we would all agree that if Malik Willis is on the board for Pittsburgh, it's like a very high likelihood that he ends up going there. But you have 3 or so teams, at least 2 teams that could very easily go quarterback. And there were rumors about like Kenny Pickett going to Houston, and he's fallen to Houston here. Maybe that ends up happening. It'll be really interesting.
Yeah, I was getting really curious because assuming Pickett is not the first quarterback to go, we're probably looking at Malik Willis at 20 to Pittsburgh. And then Kenny Pickett goes from being rumored at 6 overall to Carolina to, possibly, out of the first round, which sounds a little bit strange. And so some of the mocks, some of the articles, some of the podcasts I was ingesting before this show kind of made a point of, if we get Willis as the QB1 at 20 overall, what does that mean for Kenny Pickett? What does that mean for all of the other options? And does that necessarily mean that Kenny Pickett is the QB2 if he fell this far past teams like Carolina, past teams like Houston? Does he fall maybe to QB3, QB4? I think that's the thing that's really jumping out to me. Now that we went, defense, offensive tackle, wide receiver, it's what does this mean for really Kenny Pickett in particular? Because he could go as soon as 15 or maybe outside the first round. So I think that's really fascinating to watch for here.
The other thing too, that if you looked at a lot of mocks, they were throwing basically like the leftover quarterback to the Lions with the last pick in the first round, but they just traded that away, right? They gave that up in that trade to go up and get Jameson Williams. So now that's Minnesota's. Another wide receiver could go off the board to Minnesota there, honestly. But I think there's a far, far less likelihood that we just get that random dart and maybe Minnesota leverages that and they trade back again, right? Because it's like that Lamar Jackson situation where, teams want to get in that first round to have that rookie deal and that 5th-year option for their quarterback. And so, it's a very valuable piece. And if a guy like Pickett or even Matt Corral or whoever is still available, a team might be enticed to trade up and get back into the first round.
Yeah, and the Ravens selection is in, and they do go with safety. So defense, of course, they go with Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame. So Kyle Hamilton being the first safety off the board, who is a ball hawk and was great in coverage there for the Fighting Irish. We can always expect the Baltimore Ravens, taking a defensive player in the draft. That's something that we can always bank on here. So with Kyle Hamilton going here, safety, we're going to have Houston on the clock next. But Brandon, talk to me.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I saw Twitter. I opened Twitter for a second.
Yeah.
Field Yates at Field Yates. Yeah, everyone knows Field.
He tweeted, triple check the handle.
He tweeted, trade. The Ravens have traded wide receiver Marquis Brown to the Cardinals.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's something. Rashad Bateman season, baby.
That is all the Rashad Bateman that you can get. I mean, his stock just went. His stock just went way up. Yeah, let's check the handle here, and it is at Field Yates. That is him, unless he got hacked. That is happening. All right, so a lot to digest here. Let's talk about Kyle Hamilton just for a second, if we can, and then let's talk about the overall landscape of this pick of this trade that was just made for I guess Christian Kirk's replacement in Arizona. But Kyle Hamilton, Brandon, you got any thoughts here on the safety going to the Ravens?
Yes. I mean, if I'm looking at defense here, I'm looking at win totals basically. They were a beatable pass defense for sure, as we saw with the Joe Burrow game. But the 9.5 wins is pretty steep, and there's actually minus 130 odds on the over for Baltimore there. So I kind of disagree with that personally with what my data is saying. Another one of those teams that probably could go a lot of different ways. They have 7 games that I consider coin flip or field goal games. Those aren't guaranteed wins. I have them just 1 game where they're favored by at least 6, and actually 2 where they should be 6-point underdogs. So not necessarily the best schedule. Really interested to see how this trade shakes out if they're going to lose Marquis Brown, who, generally a pretty efficient target. So I think maybe losing Marquis Brown would bump them down, but depending on how things go, maybe a little bit of volatility for the Ravens here.
Not only that, but remember, Kyler Murray and Marquise Brown played college ball together. They're back, reunited. Yeah, this is fun. This is fun. I love
Jim would be going nuts with all these narratives.
Oh, yeah, he loves this stuff. Yeah,
the storylines seem to just lend themselves to it. I mean, where did these guys play pee-wee ball? Like, who did they grow up with? Like, what coaches are they connected to? What coaches are there? What college coach do they have that's connected to the NFL coach that they could land in? I mean, it just, they always write us up, but that's going to be an interesting one. I know the Rashad Bateman season is definitely upon us, but this has to be helpful for Mark Andrews too in Baltimore, who, I mean, is, arguably the number 1 target for Lamar Jackson once he's healthy. And Rashad Bateman's going to get his, but I mean, Mark Andrews, without having to worry about Hollywood Brown as well, is just going to, see his target share skyrocket.
Yeah, easily the tight end 1 in fantasy football after this. Obviously he had his huge season last year. Looks like they got a 3rd and so Baltimore gets the 23rd overall pick, and Arizona gets Marquise Brown in a 3rd round pick, pick 100 overall. So you have to think that Baltimore is looking wide receiver with that pick. And again, just to reiterate what we've been saying, like, we've been, everyone's mocking Jahan Dotson to the late 1st. This could be a Jahan Dotson spot to stretch the field and just replace Marquise Brown and play a similar role for him. Here goes Houston. All right, they did not get Kenny Pickett. They got Kenyon Green from Texas A&M.
Alrighty, so they go with the guard. You can tell when the new coaches take over. So we got Lovie Smith, bringing in his back in the day ways. Like, we're gonna win with defense. We're gonna win with a stout, line up front. We got our 5 running backs in the backfield that we're gonna unleash, and we're gonna ground and pound, baby. We're gonna stop teams from scoring, and we're not gonna put up that many points. We'll win games 13-10. But no, Kenyon Green there, the guard from Texas A&M, does go at pick number 15.
It can only go up from ranking 32nd in adjusted rush defense and in yards before contact per attempt. So I think a guard investment. And again, investing in the offensive line in the 1st round doesn't really feel that exciting, but it does show a tangible impact on increasing offensive efficiency. And offensive efficiency, that's what matters. That's what wins games.
Definitely. And this was a guy who played pretty much every position on the offensive line, as I'm seeing here, outside of center. Played a little bit at left tackle, left guard, right tackle, right guard last year for Texas A&M. The Washington Commanders, as they traded back, they probably knew what they were doing. They wasted no time. Their pick is in, so we'll wait for Roger Goodell to kind of come up to the board. What are we thinking here for the Washington Commanders? I know they were tied to wide receiver. Potentially, they could have that pick, as well as they were originally going to be picking at pick 11. They were tied to safety with Kyle Hamilton, potentially the Landon Collins replacement, I believe. So we got a lot to talk about with Washington. I do have 16. I did get some action on wide receiver going at this pick when Washington did trade back. Jessica, you thinking we can see a wide receiver go here, or is that run on hiatus until we get later on and maybe the picks 20 and beyond?
I do. I mean, I had him picking Chris Olave here, but obviously he's taken. So let's go Pickens or Burks. even Sky Moore is a possibility, but I feel like it's what they need to do.
Yes.
They need they need a wide receiver to be able to make those plays, and that's to be able to win games, honestly.
Definitely. And I mean, Carson Wentz can use all the help, right? I mean, this guy's going to go out there. He needs the targets. He needs just other than F1 and potentially Logan Thomas, they'll utilize him. But yeah, throwing in another solid wide receiver to go along with this group would be nice. I want to bring in Mr. Scampers here, who's coming in on YouTube, and he's talking about the thoughts on Ravens wide receiver versus running back need. It could have been a little bit delayed, but talking about Dobbins and Edwards starting the season on the PUP, as we saw Dobbins got hurt heading into the year last season. Gus Edwards as well was a favorable best ball pick, and he got hurt early on, so weren't able to see them. But do the Baltimore Ravens, are they just saying that, hey, we know what we have in Lamar, we got these kids who are coming back, we're going to get them healthy, and we're maybe with Dobbins back, maybe we don't see Lamar rush as much, as he's kind of been banged up the past couple of years, and they might want him focus in on that passing. So Rashad Bateman could definitely benefit from that. Mark Andrews benefits from that. What is the offensive outlook that we can see with the Baltimore Ravens with this move being made?
I mean, look, I think that if you look at last year, they were still a run-heavy team. I mean, they still ranked like 25th in the league in pass rate. I think that like people seem to think that they were like really pass-heavy, but you could also argue that almost everything went in a direction for them where they had to be pass-heavy, right? Like the running backs all went down, their secondary was all banged up. Like it made sense that they would have to be a more pass-heavy team last year, and they were still not very pass-heavy. I don't think that's going to drastically change as long as Greg Roman and Lamar Jackson are there. I think that they're going to run a similar offense, and they should. Like it's always been very strange to me that people would say that they need to throw the ball more with Lamar Jackson, when a Lamar Jackson rush is arguably the most valuable play in all of football and the entire NFL. Like that play is the most valuable thing that any human being on earth can do. Right. So there doesn't make that much sense for them to just like take that away or half it, or even get it to a 75% of what it's been. As long as he can stay healthy, of course. And he's stayed relatively healthy, all things considered. So I do think that they're going to still be a run-heavy team. And I do also think that they're a candidate to draft a day 2 running back, this Baltimore team, because J.K. Dobbins coming back from injury, Gus Edwards coming back from injury. They show that they didn't have any depth last season. And I think that there's a chance that they value that position, just given the offense that they're operating in. They value it a little bit more than what we would think, or what someone else would think, just looking at their depth chart. So I do think they're going to still be a fairly run-heavy team, but the reason why this all shifts and this equation shifts to Rashad Bateman and to benefit a guy like Rashad Bateman is from a target share standpoint. When you're on a run-heavy offense, you need to capture a larger target share in said offense. I think they're still going to they have to take wide receivers in this draft. Baltimore does. But the thing is that now Rashad Bateman's competing against a potential rookie, maybe even not a first round rookie. Who knows what they do? But competing against that versus Marquis Brown, he's going to see a higher target share in the offense. That's exactly what he needs to be able to be a wide receiver 2 in fantasy football. I don't think it's going to be easy for him to ever be a wide receiver 1 as long as Lamar Jackson's there. There's going to be a cap ceiling. But yes, this is huge, huge news for Rashad Bateman.
Excellent. And we got the Commanders selection in.
Got to be wide receiver.
It is wide receiver. It is Jahan Dotson. And wow. Jessica was talking about Jahan Dotson going up this early. He had been pinned, later on in the 20s. But, Washington, seeing the wide receivers go early, they probably felt like they were going to be able to move back, get a couple, picks later on in the draft, and still be able to get a guy who was high enough on their draft board before there potentially could be another run at wide receiver. Jessica, you talked about liking Jahan Dotson there, so I'll just bring you in to kind of just briefly talk about, kind of what this means for his outlook and what it can mean for the Commanders in general.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I honestly thought he was going a little bit later. I didn't think he was going to be this high up, but it just makes me, I guess, reassuring in the fact that, he was kind of like that sneaky play. Like he's that outlier in a way. Like no one wasn't that high on many people's lists, but he's a strong athletic foundation. he is he's a great player. So I feel like he's going to be able to add a lot of, he's going to be able to help out this team. And I'm actually excited that he actually got picked a little higher than I was expecting.
Excellent. No, this is an interesting one. Jahan Dotson comes out of Penn State here. Yards after the catch ability. We got his comp video up there for you guys who are watching along with us on the stream. What do you make of this, JJ? Like, what does this say about the wide receiver position, which we thought was going to be the talk of the night because of the way these guys and the team needs and everything kind of all falling into place for these guys. But now we're looking at a situation, like you said, where we could just see some day 2 wide receivers coming in on day 1 just because of the rate they're going.
Well, I have another thing to announce here, Ryan, that Adam Schefter just tweeted that the Titans are planning to trade wide receiver AJ Brown to the Eagles.
Oh my gosh.
This is like, what is happening right now?
It just doesn't get any better than
this.
This.
Remember how I said that Devontae Smith was a draft day winner? Yeah, that just went to the crapper. That's done.
Is that the shortest live hype for you, JJ?
Like, yeah, man, that was short lived for sure. But I'm just like beyond shocked by some of these moves. Not only the Jahan Dotson selection, I think was just early. I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with Jahan Dotson. I mean, he has probably some of the best hands in this class. He's a smaller wide receiver, but he plays pretty big. He had great college production, or at least like above average college production. Not an early declare, so that's somewhat of a red flag. He's a 94th percentile wide receiver in my model now. When pre-draft, he was 88th percentile because of projected draft capital. So Jahan Dotson in a pretty good spot, going to Washington, where he's going to be the number 2 to Terry McLaurin. He's the wide receiver 66 in projections right now, just because the situation's not that great, et cetera, et cetera. But, not a terrible spot for him. And he looks pretty good in the model overall. But this AJ Brown thing, I mean, I'm not putting trades into projections yet, because when we're talking like Marquis Brown and AJ Brown, and it's just a lot to think about and to consider and figure out. But it is pretty, I'm just like shocked. Like it's just, I don't know what else there. Like AJ Brown's a top 5 talent at wide receiver in the league. And, he just got dealt to Philadelphia, and he's going from one run heavy annoying team to another run heavy annoying team.
I didn't want to spoil that. That was my first thought. I was like, that's tough. Tough scene.
But this is one of those moves where it's great from a football perspective. Like it's making, Jerry Jones is unhappy and the Washington Commanders are unhappy. And I guess the Giants to a certain extent, but this is a great football move. You give Hurts there some help immediately, and, can make a splash play in the NFC East, or least when these guys, they trade off of who wins the division. We did have a guard go at pick 17, and now Tennessee is on the clock, and their pick is already in at pick 18.
Justin Herbert.
This will be interesting.
Well, I looked at my screen and it was showing the Chargers, and then it said that there was a trade, and I was like, another trade, but it was the AJ Brown trade. This is the Titans now being on the clock for AJ Brown, essentially, because they got a third also, as Diana has reported.
So this is kind of crazy too when you're talking about the wide receiver market, because the Eagles gave up 18 and a third round pick to be able to get AJ Brown. I wasn't sure what happened with the Tyreek Hill and Miami trade, but then you also have 23 essentially going from the Cardinals to the Ravens for Marquis Brown. Like, there's just interesting trades and the way that the wide receivers are kind of viewed by these different franchises. I mean, that's incredible. I
think that this makes the Cardinals trade look horrible. Right. Like, because the AJ Brown's a better wide receiver than Marquis Brown. And he's a more dynamic player, and that's only a 5-spot difference. They're both going to need to be paid. Right. And so this just seems like the better deal overall for Philadelphia. But again, I mean, I feel like I can't even think straight right now. The things that are going down. I mean, like, I was surprised by Chris Olave getting traded up for and going 11th overall. That was like the least crazy thing that's happened tonight at the wide receiver position. I mean, it's just it's a very
that's a foregone
draft.
That's a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, like Chris Olave was like not even that crazy. Like it made sense and it was the right fit. It was just I thought he was going to go a little bit later, but now we got Jahan Dotson as a mid first round pick. We got Marquis Brown going to Arizona and AJ Brown going to Philadelphia. I mean, this is why you don't got to watch Days of Our Lives. You got the NFL, man.
This honestly might lead to, and I was going to joke about this at the top of the show, and I felt like it was mean spirited, but is Green Bay going to have any first round wide receivers to take, or are they going to skip on first round receivers again?
I'm telling you, guys, when Sky Moore goes in the first round, it's a pants off moment for this show. I mean, this is going to be amazing because of the demand of the position.
I love it. I'll bring in.
Also, imagine AJ Brown going to the Packers.
Oh my gosh!
Like make that happen.
Yeah, like why is that going to be Philly? I mean, by the way, Jalen Hurts stock up, right? At least for this season, with Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, and then who knows what's going to happen after this season? But hopefully, the hope is that I would be buying Devontae Smith very very low right now in Dynasty because it's not 100% that Jalen Hurts is going to be there after this year or he's going to be the long term answer. He can still thrive as a number 2 across from AJ Brown. I mean, they can still both be relevant. And then on top of that, if they do get like a pocket passer, a more traditional pocket passer, then that's more volume to go around in that offense. So, I do think that Devontae Smith went from taking 0 hit to a pretty big hit with this deal. But look longer term than just this season. This season is going to be probably pretty rough for potentially even both wide receivers from a fantasy standpoint.
And what is the outlook in general on Jalen Hurts, just as it stands for the year 2022? You bring in AJ Brown, they're gonna have these running backs, Gainwell and Sanders and Scott or whomever else they're going to be rolling out there. Plus with Devonta, plus with Dallas Goedert. Like, can we trust Jalen Hurts to kind of offer us that upside that we've been waiting for, or is it just going to be some of the same old that we get from him?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's a firm QB1 in fantasy. He was last year, obviously. The only reason why you can't say he's like, top 3 or 4, there's just a lot of competition at the position. But if you're looking at like Joe Burrow versus Jalen Hurts, I'm going Jalen Hurts because he has the rushing component. He's got AJ Brown now. Dallas Goedert's there. Devontae Smith. I mean, they have good weapons in Philadelphia. They probably still need a little bit of depth at wide receiver. Quez Watkins and Jalen Reagor aren't going to really do it for you, but I do think that Jalen Hurts is a firm QB1. I would be taking him over the pocket passers at least. And then, once you get into that range, you're talking like, you're getting closer to like Lamar Jackson and Kyler and all that. And I think that he could arguably just be in that tier. He's got to develop as a passer, right? Like he's gotten better literally every single season that he's played football, dating back to college. He's gotten better every year. He was better from year 1 to year 2. And you just need to see that development continue. And if it does, then Philadelphia's in a very, very good spot.
I'm going to do this as a lead in as we have the Titans pick at number 18 that's in. And I'm going to bring in Brian Garrett from Facebook, who, as a Chiefs fan, he says I'm living, but I believe I'm loving all the wide receivers off of the board. We need defense. We can find a wide receiver late in the draft. Well, Brian, I don't know what wide receivers may be left for you as the Titans go wide receiver after trading their stud wide receiver. They select Treylon Burks from Arkansas, who he goes at the 18th selection. And so we just have receivers going crazy in the top 20. This is yes, JJ, this is a rookie draft. Your rookie draft has been done for you.
You want to know what's crazy about this is that they just traded AJ Brown for the guy who has been comped as a ceiling comp to AJ Brown, Treylon Burks. He's a bulldozer. You're going to see him line up. I mean, they manufactured a ton of touches for him in college at Arkansas. He's just a beastly build. He can run guys over. And he did do very well. We just didn't see him do that much against press coverage, but he did do well against press coverage on a per route basis. But he played a lot of slot in college, so he's very raw. We don't know if he's going to be able to play the perimeter right away, but a super, super high ceiling from a fantasy perspective. And now you're looking at a scenario where there's no one there in this Titans offense. There's no why they're going to have to just continuously draft wide receivers in this class. It seems like, because they just don't have anyone on that depth chart. And so they're going to have to rely on Treylon Burks year one, which is, he was more developmental, but the landing spot could be worse now that AJ Brown is gone.
Yeah, and I mean, this is absolutely incredible, and we kind of talked about this with Drake London. Okay, so yes, you are that first wide receiver to go off of the board, but with all these other landing spots that have now come into fruition and what is made for the rookie draft, like, he's going to have the draft capital for people that want to carry that on. But look at these other landing spots for these wide receivers. This is going to make for a fun rookie draft for anybody who plays in dynasty leagues. And even from a season-long standpoint, from a best ball standpoint, to even have these guys to be able to make an impact possibly late, as we saw, like, guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown coming on late for the Lions last year after not really, getting much traction at the beginning of the season, but was a best ball winner because of him coming on late. I mean, Treylon Burks is going to be out there catching passes at the beginning, even in a offense that really likes to run first with Derrick Henry. They're still going to have to, Ryan Tannehill's going to get him some targets. So this is going to be a fun one. Brandon, how's everything shaping out for you as far as wide receivers go in the draft? And have you been able to update your models, or are you just waiting for the next kind of crazy thing to come about, and you'll just handle it all after this is done?
Yes, I got my prospect model. I got the win totals. I got the 2022 player projections. I'm chipping away at all of that. But as you can see on the screen, if anyone's watching, his top comp for me is actually Dez Bryant. But my comps are not based on necessarily play style, but predictive measures, measurables such as size, production metrics, athleticism. So it's not necessarily the right play style comp, but his profile is full of tons of big names. Demaryius Thomas, Jordy Nelson, Rashad Bateman, Julio Jones, AJ Brown, of course, in the top 10 for me. Laviska Shenault, kind of an interesting one. Someone who, a bigger bodied slot receiver who hasn't really panned out yet. And I think that's the most interesting part of this for Treylon Burks, is I figured it was going to depend on what kind of offense he went to, whether they were going to try to force him outside because of his size, or let him try to play out of the slot, maybe even force him into being just a big bodied slot. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it gets used. But JJ talked about, an hour and a half ago at this point, projecting out target shares for rookie receivers, and maybe setting a baseline of like 15% for some of these rookies. And then obviously for these, these guys toward the top half of the first round, getting that bumped up. But you take AJ Brown out of this offense and you look at what else they have. He's one of the rookies I'm going to have projected for, 19, 20+% of the team's targets. And if he's going to get some bunny targets, be able to move the ball, that's kind of a really interesting profile for a team that needs someone to kind of throw the ball to.
Definitely. And we're going to wait for the New Orleans Saints to make their pick here at pick number 19. And I mean, really, these picks have been kind of flying off the board as these teams are kind of knowing what they want to do. We still have, the Pittsburgh Steelers will kick off the 20 to the end of the draft. They'll be fun. Green Bay Packers at 22, Dallas Cowboys at 24, and then we'll still have the Chiefs with a couple first rounders as well, with some interesting picks. I mean, some of these, I feel bad for some of these defensive guys and the offensive linemen who haven't gone already, because it's going to be an offensive draft. It looks like, from the most part. The quarterbacks weren't the ones making the noise. It's these wide receivers here, and that's always what we like to see from a fantasy perspective.
I've seen Penning get mocked to the Saints a good bit. He could be a look here, or they could go quarterback too, because they don't really have a locked in quarterback. But I do think that we're in a position right now to see the first quarterback go off the board at pick 20, which everyone was sort of mocking. It seems like Malik Willis is going to go to the Steelers. It just seems like that's going to be their pick. I'd be shocked if they went like Kenny Pickett over Malik. Okay.
Well, the Saints selection is in. We have Roger Goodell reading from the card, and the Saints have selected Trevor Penning, the tackle from Northern Iowa. So they do get some offensive line help to shore up there. I mean, this is a big dude, 6'7", 6'8", 325. He's going to be able to fill in nicely there on the line there for new head coach Dennis Allen and the New Orleans Saints. Jameis Winston gets a little protection there.
Can I just predict that we're going to continue to see? So I'm going to say the Steelers get Malik, and then Green Bay's picking. They might get Pickens. And then I think Baltimore, we might see Sky Moore go to Baltimore. Like we might legitimately see Sky Moore go that high and go to Baltimore. Gets Rashad Bateman last year, an analytical darling that everyone loved. And he goes to not the best landing spot because of the passing volume stuff we talked about earlier. And then if they get Sky Moore, it's going to be pretty tilting.
Well, Dallas is right behind them with pick number 24.
Which would be amazing.
They could move. We've seen them trade a time or two in the first round. We know that Jerry Jones loves to make splash plays. He just had to witness the Eagles, stealing the thunder before they even get a chance to do anything. So they could be in talks to move and get a pick.
The other thing too is I remember Mel Kiper starting not even a trend necessarily, but just like he mocked pretty early on, like 2 weeks ago, Christian Watson to Green Bay with their first round pick. Christian Watson is super raw, athletic, smaller school wide receiver, but he's a beast. He's a freak athlete, great size. Not someone that I love because his production and his profile in general in my model doesn't look great. But, just given the way the wide receiver position has gone, he's the other guy that could pop into this first round outside of Sky Moore and George Pickens that I wouldn't be shocked at all if he does. So watch out for Watson to Green Bay in the early 20s here. And then if that's the case, then Baltimore could get a true X. I guess they have Rashad Bateman, but they can get George Pickens or Sky Moore. Maybe they just forego it. But, watch for Christian Watson too.
He was so hard to project. Watson.
Yeah.
It's a really strange profile for that size, but coming out of a small school, but not necessarily having like the most dominant production despite playing in a small school. So really interesting. But I think that if anyone can get the most out of him, Aaron Rodgers would be a pretty interesting landing spot there.
Interesting. And so now, and we can still get action, Jessica, I'm going to bring you in because we can still get action as it stands right now. The 20 pick is in, so the Steelers know who they're taking. But if we're looking at the Green Bay Packers, we can still get action on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Wide receiver is the favorite. That's juiced at -125. Oh, they just took him down. But I did want to talk about that because that is interesting. Wide receiver was the favorite there at -125 for the Green Bay Packers to make at pick number 23, which would be Baltimore. We're looking at offensive lineman being defensive lineman and edge being the favorite at -125. Then you got offensive lineman at 250, wide receiver 3-1, cornerback 5-1. So that's where Baltimore comes in. We know that they do like going after guys in the trenches early. So if you have an edge there, if you think they might take O-line to kind of get something short up, or maybe they go after wide receiver, that's 3-1. So interesting stuff there for Baltimore.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually kind of saw them getting a cornerback. That was kind of high on my list. But looking at from like the wide receiver perspective, I mean, it's just funny. Like there's already 6 that have been picked, and I'm looking at who's still left, and I see the Packers, the Cowboys, the Chiefs. Those are all still who I could see even wanting to consider picking up a wide receiver too when it comes to their pick. So the over and under, I'm so sorry, my son. Even just how many wide receivers would be even picked in the first round is what was the number on it? Was it 7?
I believe it was 6.5 of where it closed. But earlier on it was 5.5 on the market. So you could definitely, get action on that a month ago.
Yeah, because that's definitely looking good, which I really like. And then I'm just excited to see if the quarterback train is about to start.
Yeah, and it should start here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's definitely going to be interesting. And you got fans in the chat, Jessica. Manuel Hernandez coming in. Jessica, you're the MVP here. So Jessica doing double duty here for all those people that understand it. I know JJ understands it. Hashtag East Coast Dad Life trademark. So the pick is in for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We all think that it's it's going to be a quarterback here. JJ, so you're talking about Malik Willis here, but let's talk about Kenny Pickett. And if it is the Pittsburgh guy and he does tend to stay home or stay home, quote unquote, and be able to go next door and just play right next door. What does that mean for the Pittsburgh Steelers outlook in general? I guess let's just talk about in general the quarterback overall standpoint for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then if it's Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's going to be Malik. That's the way that they've at least trended, but maybe it's not. If they go with Kenny Pickett, I'm telling you, if it's Kenny Pickett, the city of Pittsburgh is going to lose their mind, and I'm going to lose my mind too. Born and raised Pittsburgh. I'm not as much of a fan as I used to be, but born and raised Pittsburgh, Pitt alum. Kenny Pickett brought some great memories to all the Yinzers out there this past year. If he's the Steelers starter, it's going to be incredible. But again, there's a lot of question marks about, his hand size. There's a lot of question marks about his true ceiling. But if you put weapons around a player like that, he can still be fine and serviceable, right? And they have a very, very good defense as well. So, if they go that direction, it can still work. I just think that Malik Willis has a higher ceiling than he does.
No, that's awesome. And so we do get the pick in. Franco Harris is up there with the commissioner, Roger Goodell, as he's reading off the card. The Pittsburgh Steelers at number 20 are making a selection. And Roger Goodell is gonna ramble on, and I will too. But guys, make sure you are getting after these contests here on FanDuel. We got the jersey giveaway. We got $100 in FanDuel credits that you guys can get after. Make sure you are signing up for those. They're free to enter. We appreciate having you guys here. Make sure you're hitting the like button on the stream. That's going to do a big help for us. And subscribe. You guys can follow everybody on Twitter. We got our handles up there. Myself, Ryan Alexander _W, JJ at Late Round QB, Brandon Gdula at Gdula13, and Jessica Gridiron at Gridiron and Wine. Roger Goodell, he said his piece. He gave the card to Franco Harris. Franco Harris is actually going to read the pick, and the pick is looking like it's going to be quarterback Kenny Pickett.
Oh, there it is, JJ.
There it is. So quarterback Kenny Pickett goes off the board. The Pittsburgh guy stays in Pittsburgh again. It's the NFL, right? Like, I mean, some of this stuff is just not rocket science, right, Brandon? I was going to toss it to you. Like, you see the writing on the wall, and you kind of just say, hey, let's just go with that shot. The connection's there. Pittsburgh's there. I mean, there was talk that they could be keeping this kid at home and go there, even with them bringing in a guy like Mitchell Trubisky. Maybe he does start the season, right? And they let Kenny Pickett just kind of wait a little bit and things go awry, and they just kind of let him be the future. But he could be starting at day one. What is this outlook for you for Kenny Pickett and for the Pittsburgh Steelers in general, who have a ton of offensive weapons that we would love to, see skyrocket?
I'm gonna be right back, by the way. Give me 1 minute, okay?
Fair enough.
Wait for a Kenny Pickett Pitt jersey or something.
I hope he does.
And I'm about to in central Pennsylvania, I'm about to see a lot of Kenny Pickett jerseys for the next 10 years, no matter what happens with Kenny Pickett's career. But yeah, the comp that JJ threw out and that a lot of people have, I have, Jim Sonis has, for Kenny Pickett is Andy Dalton. And Andy Dalton is not the franchise quarterback you might want your franchise to be tied to, but Andy Dalton has a lot of serviceable years in his career, throwing to a lot of capable receivers, supporting fantasy relevant receivers. Ryan Tannehill is also a top 5 comp for Kenny Pickett in my draft model. The thing with Pickett, one of the red flags, there's not a whole lot of red flags, but the one thing that you really can knock on him is just the lack of production until he was older. And is this a pit? Yeah. Okay. There we go. Yeah.
Yep.
And age is such an important factor in prospect work, regardless of position, because the development you have between 18 and 22 or 23 for some of these guys is pretty immense. And if you're putting up production, a name that we've been kind of tossing around that jumps to mind, not a quarterback here, but with Pickens at a receiver, like he broke out at age 18 at Georgia. Like that's against that schedule, like that matters. So for Pickett, like to be a little bit of an afterthought until, his final season is a little bit concerning. But there are some hits in his profile. Andy Dalton, Ryan Tannehill, Russell Wilson's on the lower end of a comp here. But I mean, you put someone like that in an offense with weapons, they can support that. They can make the playoffs. Like, it's a really interesting fit. The ceiling, which is what everyone's saying, the ceiling's not as high as what it is for Malik Willis, but this could keep them relevant. I mean, living in Central PA, I know that the Steelers are relevant year in, year out, and this is going to keep them relevant. Keep that floor high. I don't know what the ceiling is, but I think that you can stand behind Kenny Pickett for as long as you want.
Yes. And so before, as we saw JJ leave to put on his Pittsburgh Panthers gear here, you should have already been in the gear, JJ. You should have just came prepared.
Look, I did not think the Steelers were going to take Kenny Pickett, but it's fun, right? It's just like, I'm not like this like massive Steeler fan anymore, but I just love storylines like this so much.
Awesome.
I love it. Again, Jim's just missing out. Jim would be.
This is probably the most insane draft I've ever that I can remember. It's in the Chiefs, by the way, just traded up to the 21st pick.
I was gonna say, if you think it's insane, JJ, just wait.
Bro, because if this is Sky Moore, if this is Sky Moore, this gotta be Pickens. You got to think this is definitely a wide receiver, possibly Pickens, who. Let's just talk about Pickens' profile in general, because I do think the way that things are going with this being the 21 pick, and we still have 12 picks to go, I guess, including this one, we're going to see at least one or if not two wide receivers go. So George Pickens is definitely in the realm of possibility here. This was a guy who kind of, injuries kind of hindered him from being what he possibly could have been here in the draft, but still kind of a younger guy. The upside, I think, is there for him. What's the outlook, JJ, on a guy like George Pickens, and how does he fare with the remaining wide receivers on the board? Yeah, I mean, you have to do a little projecting with Pickens because he was injured throughout college. He had that great freshman year, really good breakout age as a result of that. That's really good to see. Great size, great length. If you look at the wide receivers at the top end of this class, there's probably only two true like X receivers, right? Those true number one guys. It would be Drake London, and then it would be George Pickens, because the other guys, can play and will play all over the field and stretch the field more and just play a different role. Whereas Pickens can play that traditional X. And so if you look at what the Chiefs are doing, they have MVS to stretch the field. They have Juju in the slot. They have Travis Kelce at tight end. Pickens fits perfectly with what they have. If this is not Pickens, I'd be pretty surprised, honestly. I think that this has to be Pickens.
So we'll see. The Chiefs selection is in. They're already talking about Chargers at Chiefs to kick off the NFL season Thursday on September 15th. So if you haven't marked your calendars already, that's when we're going to get.
What's that over-under going to be?
Kickoff. Yeah, exactly. On Amazon Prime, mind you. So that's a fun one as we start getting all these other TV entities in play. And the Chiefs make the selection, and it is cornerback Trent McDuffie from Washington. So they do go corner here with this pick, JJ. Now, again, they will have another first round pick as of late, so they can still get one of the guys potentially that's on their board at wide receiver with one of those picks if they do so choose. But cornerback going here, we get back to the defensive side of the ball here with Trent McDuffie being the next one taken off. As Jessica was mentioning, the Packers taking a cornerback that was plus 900 with their pick in that range. A cornerback going there, I thought that was interesting, and cornerback as well for the number 23 pick plus 500. But with Trent McDuffie going off the board, I think we see cornerbacks tabled for a little bit here. So what does this mean for the Chiefs here, and what can we expect them to do with that second pick? JJ, I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what wide receivers there. Again, I think that left you have Pickens, Christian Watson could go. I could see Christian Watson going to Green Bay here, but Baltimore's going to need a wide receiver. Tennessee, I guess they already took one, but they could even still be in the market for one. So, I do think I keep going back to Sky Moore as this like darling. But I do think like he's the inflection point of like, I think we're going to see Pickens, unless the off the field stuff is a bigger deal than we know. I do think we're
Right.
going to see Pickens in the first. I do think we're likely to see. I mean, Christian Watson has a higher likelihood to go in the first, I think, than Sky Moore does. But I will say, Kuiper had a mock. I believe it was Kuiper who had Sky Moore going to the Chiefs at the end of the first round. And if that happens, it's another pants off moment for this stream.
Yes, that that would be. You've already had a one, JJ.
Right.
As we saw you excuse yourself earlier, we appreciate that. We might get a second one here. The Green Bay Packers. The pick is in. Bring in Brian Garrett from Facebook again. Green Bay should draft Malik Willis with this pick, and of course, laughing emojis to follow that. That would be something. They're paying $50 million to your franchise quarterback, MVP there, and then drafting his replacement yet again, as they still have to figure out what to do with Jordan Love. But I digress. So we got the Green Bay Packers here, who have been in the mix pretty much in the NFC race these past couple of years, and that was with kind of a core at place. Now they've moved on from Devontae Adams. They don't have another weapon for Aaron Rodgers to go to. They do have these running backs still in the backfield, but what if they don't make a pick at wide receiver here? Like, what can we expect the outlook to be for the Green Bay Packers in general? Brandon, what are your thoughts on this pick? If they don't make a wide receiver pick here, they could pick one later, and that could be fine. But we've talked about it. It seems like for the past 3 years of them making a first round pick, and they refuse to do so. They had Devontae Adams before. They don't have him now. What would be the reasoning?
I mean, like they got, unless everyone that they loved is gone and they have such a teardrop that they won't jump up here and take Watson or Moore or Pickens. That would be the only explanation that really I could see, because their top need for an offense this good is just wide receiver. Give Aaron Rodgers more opportunities to beat other teams. They were 6th in adjusted pass defense last year, 31st against the rush. But guess what? That number against the rush just does not matter. A lot of playoff teams rank poorly in rush defense, so they do not need to fill that need. They need to invest in that offense, get Aaron Rodgers more pass catchers, keep him in his prime. And if they don't take a receiver here, it's got to just be that they had such a big drop off to these guys remaining. That's the only explanation.
No, that is that is an explanation, and that is an explanation that you give, because they Green Bay Packers do select linebacker Quay Walker from Georgia here. So
that's a name I did see climbing up the ranks. That was someone who and again, I don't do a lot of linebacker analysis, but I did see Walker get talked up a lot in recent mocks. So I guess I get it, but also like I should have known better that they weren't gonna take a receiver. We all should have known better.
We all knew better, and we do know better. But we do have them picking again before the draft does close out. So there is still a chance to have a wide receiver taking with the first round pick. But you got to think a guy like
there
Quay.
A chance? I mean,
there is always a chance. Is it likely? We'll see who's on the board when they come to pick. We are going to have the Buffalo Bills up next at pick 23. Then we got Dallas at pick 24, Baltimore at pick 25. As we're rocking and rolling here on the FanDuel Day 1 NFL Draft live stream. We appreciate you guys rocking along. I see the YouTube chat blowing up. We love it. We've had a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss, and there's going to be a lot to discuss even after this weekend. So things are falling into fruition. And of course, we wouldn't have, it wouldn't be the draft without these trades that are coming in. Again, the over-under on trades, you had to take the over. We got Buffalo Bills making a trade at pick 23. We'll wait to see what that, I guess who was somebody else picking at 23, and that's where Buffalo came in.
Buffalo is at, I'm confused what they're showing right now on what was the original?
Oh,
Buffalo.
Buffalo.
Baltimore is at 23.
Okay,
they switched to 25. So they Buffalo traded with Baltimore. I wonder. I mean, we keep talking about wide receivers, but
I think 23 was. Sorry, good.
23 was Arizona that went to Baltimore because of the Marquis Brown trade. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah. So like, I know we keep talking about wide receivers, but there's just so many wide receiver needy-ish teams here. Like Buffalo, also sort of wide receiver needy. They seem to like Gabe Davis, but they, I don't think they're in that bad of shape. Jamison Crowder, they signed, he can play the slot for them. Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis playing the outside. I think that they're fine enough there, but there were wide receivers being mocked there. I can't imagine that they traded up to get the running back that, people were mocking Breece Hall to Buffalo. We haven't talked running back at all on this stream tonight, but I don't see Buffalo being a fairly progressive and forward-thinking organization going with a running back in the first round. But we've seen, that happen in the past with teams who think that they're just one piece away. So who knows? I think it's interesting that they're trading with Baltimore to do it because Baltimore would hypothetically need that wide receiver too, or wide receiver also, I should say. So I guess Baltimore might see that there's just not a particular wideout that they would need here, or they're just going to wait till the second round. I know that we keep talking about wide receivers, but there's just so many wide receiver needy teams, and that's the storyline of this draft. Let's be honest, it's wide receiver.
Right. That's the storyline of the NFL, though, because you got to get those. It's not enough to have one pass catcher. You got to have 3. You got to have a tight end. You got to have running backs out of the backfield, and that's why we're seeing this run on receivers. And honestly, I mean, we have the talent to justify it, but that's because these prospects coming in, they're getting ready to play in the new NFL. So I think we're gonna be talking to receiver every single year on this day one show because it's just going to be the future.
Yeah, I was going to say that's going to have to change the way we do things from a mock perspective as we kind of get into this new era of what football is. I mean, this was a draft that we knew what the talent was, and we were kind of maybe expecting there to be the surefire talent going on day one, and then teams maybe taking some of the chances with their second round picks, their day 2 picks, and we're seeing now that these GMs and these franchises are evaluating player talent a little bit differently and being able to take a shot on guys in the first round. So I mean, when we get the likes of a stellar a stellar group coming out, it's going to be just absolutely insane for years to come with these skill position players. And we didn't even really have like the strong, I mean, Breece Hall's there and he's going to be a great running back for fantasy purposes, but we didn't have the Ezekiel Elliott's or Najee Harris's of the world coming into this draft. So that would throw another wrench into it for drafts to come. So this is fun, and not having a strong QB class as well. So just going to be a fun outlook from a skill position in general for these next couple drafts. So here was the trade with the Bills and the Ravens. The Bills received the pick, number 23 pick, and the Baltimore Ravens would get that 25th pick, and then also a 4th rounder, which is set to be pick 130 for them. So Baltimore really doing justice to stack up in this draft, and kind of that's what we see with Baltimore. They usually build through the draft, and they've done very well at doing so. So with the Buffalo Bills, they are showing their draft room. Their pick is in. JJ, what would you like to see here from Buffalo from the Bills standpoint?
I mean, they're pretty strong throughout. I don't know what direction they're going here. They clearly have a guy in mind because they traded up to do so. Again, I don't think that this is the Breece Hall pick that a lot of people were projecting. Does Breece Hall fit in with what they're doing and what they could probably utilize? Sure. But you can also get, it's a replacement level position or replaceable position. Breece Hall's a 3-down back for sure. And he would totally torpedo a guy like Devin Singletary. But, I think if you look at what the Bills did at the running back position earlier this offseason and trying to get JD McKissick, I think we're more likely to see them go after like a James Cook, Dalvin's brother, who's a great pass catcher, really dynamic. I think we're more likely to see them do that and use a 1-2 punch. Zach Moss just not in the picture anymore. I think we're more likely to see them do something like that because it just makes more sense for how you should team build. If you rather than spending a premium pick on a guy like Breece. But we'll see. The pick is in right now,
and the pick is cornerback Kaiir Elam from Florida.
Okay,
I believe
you're getting some steam.
Yeah,
I've seen his name a lot at the tail end of the first round. he and Andrew Booth, kind of the late first round cornerbacks to be on the list. But yeah, not that surprising, honestly. Really good investment, again, to invest in your secondary and offensive line. So if the team is good offensively as the Bills, doesn't hurt to invest in that defense, which probably can't be as good. Do you see a trade?
I did not. I'm agreeing with you what you're saying,
okay.
Brandon. 1,000%.
Sorry, I got like the trade jitters. I'm assuming any noise at all is a trade that I'm missing here. But yeah, I mean, I talked earlier about regression with defense, and with the defense being as good as Buffalo's, it's bound to step back just by the nature of how defenses work. But that's not a knock on Elam. It's just how you have to take that into account whenever you're projecting things out. But honestly, for a team as good as this, I think it's a really smart play.
Yeah, and also let's just talk about it. I mean, we know what the Buffalo Bills are bringing to the table. This is a team that is going to be set to compete for the Super Bowl, to compete, for the AFC Championship, bar none. And when you're looking at the teams that they're going to be going up against in the AFC, these are teams stacked with talent, pass catching talent, quarterback talent that they need. You need depth at the defensive positions, especially cornerback specifically, to be able to compete with these guys. So I think that's definitely a move that the Buffalo Bills wanted to make as they go corner there. We have the Dallas Cowboys on the clock. They just showed their war room. As you can see, that the wheels are already turning. The hamsters are full at work for Jerry Jones up there as he's trying to figure out what he can do to make his mark on the 2022 NFL draft. So we'll let that come to fruition, guys. We got some other interesting picks here, as pick 26 is available for the Tennessee Titans. The favorite for them, the position favorite for that pick at least, is quarterback at plus 125. We still have to figure out where Malik Willis is going to be going, if he indeed does go in the first round, which is what people are projecting. So we got some interesting players who could take a quarterback, I guess. I mean, really, we're looking at Tennessee there, Baltimore and Green Bay, Tampa Bay. I mean, it's going to be interesting. New England's there. They have Mac Jones. Cincinnati's set. Minnesota is pick 32.
I think a team's going to trade up into the first. It just seems like the likely thing to happen.
Yeah, and it'll probably cap off the night as that would be just the fireworks to put the icing and cap on what's been a remarkable and exciting 2022 NFL draft already. Guys, as we wait for the pick to get in, you guys are watching the FanDuel Night 1 NFL Draft live stream here. Thanks for rocking along with us as we just hit that 2 hour and 30 mark. It doesn't even feel like it's been that long, but I see the people here who are in chat who have been watching on the stream from the beginning. We appreciate it, whether you're watching on Twitch, Facebook, or YouTube. Make sure you guys are getting after the contest that we have going on for you. You can follow the description, or our producer Andrew Greenblatt will throw that up for you guys with QR code. You can scan that there. Make sure you get after these contests. We got the NFL jersey that we're giving away. We also got $100 in FanDuel credits, guys. You guys don't want to miss out on these. Make sure you get signed up. All right, as we just are a couple picks away, we got to talk about the Dallas Cowboys here, who are on the clock and are giving us some time to kind of talk about them. Wide receiver, they trade away Amari Cooper. Michael Gallup is coming back banged up. They did invest a first round pick not too long ago in CeeDee Lamb. They need, to get Dak Prescott some help. They also could shore up some things on defense that has really come into its own over the past couple of years with some of the young talent they have. What can we expect from the Dallas Cowboys, or what should we expect from the Dallas Cowboys as they get ready to make this pick? JJ, what are your thoughts?
I don't think they're going to go wide out. Just given what's here, I don't think that it's necessary. So yeah, I mean, I
go Jermaine Johnson.
Oh wow, he's still on the board, isn't he?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the pick. That's the pick. That's the pick. I didn't realize I didn't even think about that.
I know it's a name that like just kept sliding down, and it just seems inevitable that it's a good fit.
Is there medicals with like why is he? I mean, he was projected to go top 10 in a lot of mocks.
Yeah, I know. It's just a name I've been monitoring. Toward the top, I was like, when we were talking about pick 7 through 10, it's like you never know. Johnson's a name that I see floated around out there. Then we got into the receiver run. Then we're thinking about Pickett and Willis, and I just forgot about it. Realized he's out there, and it feels like it has to be. And if not, I mean, I don't know how much farther he's going to slide down. So
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of ways that the Dallas Cowboys can go here as their pick is in. We'll see that come to fruition at any moment. Jessica, as it relates to the Dallas Cowboys here, do you have anything in mind for them, either on the defensive or offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I was leaning a wide receiver, but that was just because I was assuming that all of the top offensive tackles and the edge rushers would be gone. But the fact that just Brandon, you just saying that Jermaine Johnson is still on the board, that's honestly would be my pick. That's what I like too. I'm like, even you, JJ, is there an injury concern there? Because yeah, just like saying, watching a lot of things and hearing a lot of other people's perspectives, Jermaine Johnson was pretty high on their list. So I am surprised that he's already this far down.
Well, we do get a pick made here. Tyler Smith, the tackle from Tulsa, is going to the Dallas Cowboys. They did lose 2 offensive linemen this offseason, so I guess that we kind of buried the lead there, as that should have been a primary focus for this team in this draft, to kind of make sure that they shore up that offensive line there for Dak Prescott. They're able to do so by bringing in Tyler Smith. What are our thoughts here for offensive tackle for the Dallas Cowboys?
They need the help on the offensive line. I mean, it's not the same offensive line that we saw when Zeke and Dak were rookies and younger. They need help in the offensive line, so it's great to get that help. So it's the right kind of position to draft. And like I said earlier, that's what you should be looking at first and foremost. I also want to add, I'm going to predict right now. This is my trifecta. Okay.
We're ready for it.
This is my official final wide receiver tout of this show. Okay.
All right.
Baltimore gets George Pickens. Green Bay gets Christian Watson. Kansas City gets Sky Moore.
Okay.
There's gonna be 3 more wide receivers here in the first.
Well, Baltimore's taking Johnson, so I mean, let's be real. Baltimore sees any defensive player that's a value.
That's like slipping that they just go after him. Yeah, I mean that's very true. It's a good point.
I love your call, but I mean,
and if Pickens will go to Green Bay, and then I don't think we'll see Watson in Kansas City. It doesn't feel like a Kansas City kind of wide receiver.
Yeah, and this is already This is already shaping up as a day 2 tilt for me before it even starts, as the Bears are set to pick early on in day 2. And we're probably, Christian Watson and Sky Moore were potentially day 2 picks, and they could possibly, see those guys come in. And now that seems like a foregone conclusion that they won't be available. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But I digress. That's for another day, and I can still enjoy Friday night here with the peeps, and that's what we will do as the Baltimore Ravens are on the clock here, and they will be able to make their pick. Pick 25, guys. We're basically at the home stretch here with the draft for day 1. So pretty compelling stuff. A team. I kind of wanted to talk about this with you guys as a team who's not picking in the first round for quite some time with the 49ers. I did kind of want to briefly touch on the Deebo Samuel saga and just like what the thoughts were around that. Like where do we kind of see him fitting in, as all of these teams who are wide receiver needy are pretty much addressing this through the draft. Like what is going to be able to happen here, for Deebo to be dealt, as they, Deebo says that he wants to be traded and he doesn't want to play. But if he's going to be on the team, John Lynch said that he's not letting this guy go. There's no way. And there's not going to be first round pick equity, at least for 2022, to offer for Deebo unless something happens late. Like, what are your thoughts on that situation in general? And then, Brandon, maybe touch on it from a perspective just for how we should be viewing that. Like, should we be attacking him in best balls because people are low on him and they don't know where he's going to be? If he still is in San Francisco, he's not going to hold out. He does want to miss out on that money. Like, what's the consensus, or what's the upside for him at all, if any?
Yes, I mean that would depend on the asking price and how low that ADP gets with the best ball. I think I look at stuff primarily from redraft and daily fantasy standpoints, and so one thing that I'm really bad with is dynasty and things like contracts. But the one hang up I heard was that they were still trying to get the Jets deal done, but with the amount of time between when the talks really got up to speed, there wasn't going to be enough time to work on that contract before the deal was made. So this could be maybe something that we find out what the Jets did had something to do with, just buying time to get in on Debo. But, for me, there's a lot of risk. Usually I'm a little bit more risk averse in things like best balls, just because I've built some really bad best ball lineups by thinking that I could get an edge, take some chances, take some swipes on things. And, it just depends on how low that asking cost gets. So for me, it's more of a wait and see approach, and that's why I love the DFS part of it, because I'll know by week 1 what the deal is.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's always the way to attack it. JJ, your thoughts just quickly on that Debo situation in general, if you have any.
Yeah, I mean, look, players have more leverage than people realize all the time in these situations. So I wouldn't say that it can't happen and go down. I think that the reason he probably wants to go is that he doesn't want to be utilized in that running back role anymore. And that's kind of, he's a great wide receiver, don't get me wrong, but that's also the allure with him, is that you can be really versatile with him, right?
Right.
Future picks can always be sent though. So, just because it hasn't happened during this draft doesn't mean that it won't happen, after the draft is over. So, we'll wait and see. I think it can go either direction, but I do think that we should be aware that players have plenty of leverage in these situations. But, we're also seeing a lot of teams getting these wide receivers, and they may feel set at wide receiver, even if those wide receivers aren't ready to really produce or even hit, right? They might not be good.
Right. And just the way that teams kind of value the wide receiver and equity. I mean, these draft trades are not even draft trades. Trades in general are just not created equal. I mean, look at what Marquis Brown went compared to what Devontae Adams went for, or even, AJ Brown today. Just not all the same. And DeAndre Hopkins, a couple of years back. It's just kind of crazy how these teams evaluate the trades that come through. So it'll be an interesting one to watch. The Ravens pick is in, so we will await that to happen. Still kind of just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wide receivers taken thus far already is what my count is, and possibly could even see more with the Tennessee Titans being on the clock here at 26, and then we'll have a couple to close it out. It'll be interesting. Brandon,
I thought you were counting up the trades.
I mean, basically, we could, we're pretty close on that. Like, what, that would have been a fun bet. What will we see more of? Trades on day 1 or wide receivers drafted, and it's pretty close.
Yeah. I'm really interested, though, while we're just waiting here, that looks like the Ravens pick is in. I know I mentioned it like with Willis, but now I'm wondering how late the other quarterbacks will go. Could be that everybody tries to jump up in at the end of the first round. Could be that we see 2 or 3 names within the first few picks in the second round. But, that's a little bit more of a long-term projection from a fantasy angle. But at this rate now, I'm curious to see how that second tier of quarterbacks gets treated in the draft.
And what it also means is a lot of the teams that, like an Atlanta or a Houston that have these like iffy situations at quarterback, they don't have to spend a first round pick anymore to get some competition in there. Right. So that's another situation where things could get interesting.
All right, here we go. We got the Ravens selection is in. Roger Goodell coming to the podium, and we will wait to see what this pick is. This pick is center Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa. So another trench pick there for the Ravens. They get some offensive line help to go along there for Lamar Jackson and company. This is a team that, like I said, they built through the draft. They built through their trenches. This is a team that's just going to be methodical about the way that they do things from the process standpoint. What are our thoughts here on this pick for the Ravens?
Seems to make sense. He's one of the guys, if you were to, you know, if you look at like PFF grades and such, and the way that they were ranking things, you know, he's one of the guys that actually did stand out within his position. He just plays a position that's just naturally a little bit devalued. So they're getting a really, really good player, really solid player. It's just the position isn't necessarily a position that warrants a top pick per se. So it's a really solid pick though overall, given that they've gotten him in the late first. I mean, I saw him getting mocked at like 20 to Pittsburgh if they didn't go the quarterback route. So I'm getting mocked, you know, in that late teens area. So solid pick overall.
Excellent. And we'll get
Is this another trade? Or am I behind?
No, it looks like the Jets are now next instead of, who was it?
The Titans.
The Titans.
Oh, right. The
So
Jets are about to give Malik and give Zach Wilson some competition.
This is interesting. Yeah, this has to be another trade. So yeah, Brandon. I mean, we're at 4 to 6 right now. Trades to wide receivers taken. So always a fun one to talk about. Just to update the odds on the FanDuel Sportsbook, if we're talking pick, what is this? Pick 28. So that would be Green Bay. Wide receiver, if they still keep that pick, wide receiver at minus 320 on the FanDuel Sportsbook right now. So I mean, even the sportsbook is backing Green Bay to take a pick. If you don't like that, then maybe you want to take some long shot action here. They got defensive lineman basically 4.5 to 1, offensive lineman 3.5 to 1, quarterback 7.5 to 1, linebacker again would be 9 to 1, and that would be just like the Green Bay Packers leave with 2 linebackers on the first round. So just wanted to bring that up as we wait for the Jets pick to come in, as this will be their 3rd pick of the first round. Is that correct?
Yeah. I'll say this too. I saw a tweet from Charles Robinson over on Yahoo that says, from an exec, this is from an exec, so he's reporting this. Jermaine Johnson isn't sliding. The media had him overvalued. Good player, not elite. Needs the right personality fit too. So maybe this is Jermaine Johnson. Maybe that's why they're trading up. You got to love the Jets trading up and them still just being on the clock for 5 minutes. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's Jermaine Johnson. They're celebrating, which is shocking because we don't see these war room celebrations very often during the NFL draft.
Not a chance. And I mean, the Jets fans are going wild in and of themselves too. So I mean, they're listen, as far as the draft goes, let's not talk about the trades and all that other stuff, but 3 first-round picks, you know, in any draft, like you are the talk of the draft. So they have a chance here to make another impact pick. And we'll see what happens if it's on the offensive or defensive side of the ball. Their pick is in. This will be interesting to see. We've got Tampa Bay, Green Bay, New England. If they keep it, they're already traded back once. They love trading back. KC, Cincinnati, and Minnesota to close it out, guys, for day 1. We appreciate you guys being here with us. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, just take a second, hit that like button for us. We appreciate that. I see the numbers going up, but we want to make sure that the viewers, it's matching up. So I appreciate everybody taking that time. And if you want to, if you're so inclined, subscribe to the stream, subscribe to our channel. We'll be sure to give you guys, if you hit that notification bell, you can catch any time that we go live. You'll just get a notification. But even then, if you just subscribe to the channel, you'll be privy to all of the content that we have to offer all season long. So make sure you guys are doing that. As we wait for the Jets pick to come in, the odds have now closed on pick number 28. So I think there's something here with the pick possibly that could have affected that, but we shall see, as the sportsbook has been great at updating those odds. So we'll keep you posted there. What are the thoughts right here with the Jets? They went out and they took care of business getting Sauce Gardner there to be a lockdown corner for them. They also go out and they get Garrett Wilson. What other needs are there that stick out to you when you're thinking about the New York Jets and what they can do to have an impact player come in round 1 here?
They could go edge again. I mean, they really could. I do think that this is a prime spot to get a guy like Jermaine Johnson and just like, I mean, that's a potential 3 top 10 projected players if they go that route. Within one draft is pretty impressive. So that's the direction I think that they're likely to be going in here.
And Roger Goodell's at the podium. The selection is in. It is Edgman.
There it is.
Jermaine Johnson, the second, coming from Florida State. So, the media talk be damned. The Jets saw value here in a guy who is still on the board and probably still on a lot of people's big boards. They just didn't know when to pull the trigger. The Jets do so by moving up, and they're able to get their guy. I mean, look at the Jets draft. Impact players all around. Sauce Gardner, Jermaine Johnson, and Garrett Wilson. I mean, as far as the draft goes, are they front runners to be the winners of tonight?
They're gonna win. They're gonna win all the post draft stuff,
the post draft grades,
columns, and such. And it looks like Jacksonville just scooted up in front of Green Bay. We know why. We know why it's happening. And also, we're talking about Sky Moore all the whole time here. They should not draft him here. They should get. They're good. I think this is George Pickens. Like you look at their wide receiver situation. They have a bunch of like slot dudes. Like Christian Kirk is better off in the slot than he is in the perimeter. They get rid of DJ Chark. They don't have that go-to X. Laviska Shenault's terrible. I think this is the Pickens pick. Maybe they go Christian Watson or something. And because they just like Watson more. But I think that Pickens makes a ton of sense here. And I will say too that if Pickens doesn't go here, I think the off the field stuff is a bigger deal than what we've sort of thought going into the draft process.
This is absolutely incredible. I mean, just typical Green Bay fashion here. Just DGAF mode when it comes to the draft. It's every year. They're going to do things how they do them. That's their way, and we'll let other people have at it. So this will be interesting to see Jacksonville pick. They will pick at number 27. Then we'll have Green Bay, New England, KC, Cincinnati, and Minnesota to round it out. Brandon, are there any other? We talk about the Jets, and they kind of will be the front runners and the front page of tomorrow if you're talking about sports and draft coverage of what happened tonight. But are there any other teams that stick out to you that really did what they needed to do when it comes to the 2002 NFL draft?
I mean, one team that just jumps to mind because sometimes I like taking the sure thing. The Eagles getting AJ Brown. Like that's something that can easily be lost here, but like we want to project out these receivers. Like we know what AJ Brown is. AJ Brown's phenomenal. And it didn't seem like it took a whole lot to get to him. So just glancing at this board, I mean, we can talk all we want about the incoming prospects, but like that's one that, a week from now I'm going to still be thinking about because that's a needle mover.
Yeah, that's going to need its own kind of day. I feel like once all this is done, once the draft is done on Saturday, this is going to need its whole kind of. We're going to need to give it its own TLC Monday, Tuesday to kind of factor in as to what that means. I mean, I guess Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown were working out together already last week. So kind of maybe there was some writing on the wall there that came to fruition with that. That's always interesting to see. We're waiting. They're just now talking about the trade here. Jacksonville trades up at 27. We definitely want to see what the details for that trade are. And as soon as those come up or I see them here on the Twitter sphere, I'll be sure to share those with you guys. We haven't even, Jessica, I want to bring you in because we really haven't even talked about the overall storyline about this draft in general. And that's that it's being housed in Las Vegas. I mean, this was a place that they were never going to have the kids come for the NFL draft. There was never going to be any excitement or fun. And now that, betting is what it is and the entities that be, the sports entities that be are getting behind sports betting. It's in Las Vegas. I mean, what a sight for the NFL draft. And we saw how many people were there. This has got to be exciting for the NFL and exciting for bettors all around that we are seeing events like this happening.
Absolutely. And just the amount of states that have even just allowed betting now that have come through in the past few months. I mean, it's just what I'd give to be in Vegas right now, to be able to experience the excitement and, just the all around factor of just how it's just changed in so many ways. Like,
right.
Sorry.
No, he agrees too.
Yes. It's like there's fantasy, which is so great, and then there's the betting aspect on it, and then to be in a place where the mecca of the whole, you're basically in Candyland. And for the players to be able to be around there and experience it, I think it's really cool.
No, that's awesome. I think you hit it right on the head. It's just an exciting place to be in. Just the fact that we saw them move a team there. Now they're having the draft there. I'm sure there's a lot of other things that are going to be planned for Vegas as the sports betting and sports gambling world just even becomes that much more into fruition. And making sure that their players don't really benefit from that. Shout out Calvin Ridley. But that is what it is. So the Jaguars pick is in, and we will see what this is, and we're going to close this out. Green Bay, I think I wanted to see if the FanDuel Sportsbook did have the odds up for any other picks. It looks like we kind of closed it out because we are working a little bit in advance there on some picks. So shout out to everybody who was able to get some action in, cash in on some bets. There were a lot of bets that came to fruition in those mid-tier rounds. If you were following along with us and kind of taking some of those picks in, JJ was sitting on a couple, Brandon was sitting on a couple spots, Jessica hit on a couple spots there too. So this was fun to be able to rock along with you guys on this. Jacksonville, if they don't go a wide receiver here, JJ, what would be the next need for them that you would slate out, or is this wide receiver a bust?
You got to protect Trevor Lawrence. They can go offensive line, but I do think that they made this move to take a wide receiver because of the team that they jumped, right?
Right.
I've thought this a couple times though in the 20s so far, and it hasn't happened, but this one seems logical. Just given the fact they jumped Green Bay, I think that if Jacksonville does pick here, a wide receiver here, they'll probably go George Pickens. And then I think Green Bay will take Christian Watson with their next pick because he's been tied to them. I could see them going with that like ultra athletic wide receiver. And he's not bad. I don't know if he's a true one. And that's the issue that you're running into. Allen Lazard would end up being a pretty big winner overall in the, from this draft. If at the end of the day they don't get one or they even get Christian Watson, I think Allen Lazard's the big winner.
Right, which so we'll talk about this. I think when Green Bay comes on the clock, if they don't trade back, but I do think there is something to be said. I think every year we kind of come after the front office of Green Bay, right, and that they're not doing anything to give Aaron Rodgers help. But is this just Aaron Rodgers not wanting that? Does he not want to rely on a rookie wide receiver who's going to go out there and needs to learn and what have you? Like I can just bring in, I can be comfortable with Allen Lazard. He knows how I'm throwing the ball and I don't have to, work with him extra. I bring back Randall Cobb, who knows how I like to throw the ball. I don't have to work with him extra. I got Robert Tonyan, who's coming in, hopefully healthy. Like, is he just telling them like, I got the pieces involved. Like, you don't worry about it. Like, don't just do what you do and I'll handle my business. Just I'll throw with my guys type of thing.
I'll answer this in more detail after we get the Jags pick because they're about to make the selection. But yeah, once Green Bay's on the clock, I have some hashtag takes on the wide receiver stuff. Perfect.
So we get Devin Lloyd from Utah going to Jacksonville here. Wow. So another splash play there with one of the better, I think 1A, 1B linebacker from this draft. A lot of people were talking about him potentially going in the first round. And he does so here. Jacksonville trades up and probably not worried about Green Bay taking a wide receiver. They just go out and they get their guys. So you now got two really impact players on the defensive side of the ball and Walker and Lloyd that you're able to kind of mold in and help Trevor Lawrence out on the other side of the ball just by being able to stop some teams. And I do think that the AFC South is a little bit interesting just when we look at it from the overall scope and just like not really having that many strong teams outside of the Titans. Like I do think that there's some merit here for the Jaguars to kind of build up and let Doug Peterson, be there for a couple of years and get this team back to where they were, competing for an AFC championship so many years ago. It feels like 5 years ago, whatever it was. What are you guys' thoughts here, JJ? What's your thoughts on Devin Lloyd going to the Jaguars?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised. Again, a lot of the reason why I keep thinking wide receiver for these teams in the 20s is just because of what happened in the teens at the wide receiver position. That's really I'm just thinking that the supply and demand equation is favoring wide receivers going off the board. But clearly, that's not the case because there's still good players that are on the board that these teams are trading up for. So, it's still a big need for Jacksonville. I would assume that they're going to still get some pass catchers in this draft, on day 2. But again, I think left right now, you still have Pickens, you have Sky Moore, you have Christian Watson. Those are the 3 that I think are capable of going in the first round here. And then there's kind of a drop. I mean, like David Bell was profiled pretty well as a true 1 pre-combine, and then he tested really poorly. And I think he might not even be a day 2 guy anymore. I mean, there's a possibility that he falls out. Justin Ross was someone that people were pretty high on for his early career production in college, and he has that neck issue. And there was a report today that he might not even be drafted. There's just not like these like true, Jalen Tolbert's kind of interesting, smaller school guy from South Alabama, that will probably go on day 2. That profiles as that bigger guy, that true X, but there's just not a lot of that in this draft. And so I'm just a little bit surprised that a team like Jacksonville that needs that, wouldn't go after it. And I do think that, again, especially if Green Bay gets like Christian Watson here over George Pickens, you can't underestimate the off the field stuff, because that was something that was brought up consistently with Pickens. And it sucks that you can't just go by talent, but teams want players that are there, right, mentally. And so if they have question marks, then that's why a guy like Pickens might fall out of the first round.
And the Jaguars are still trying to fill the void left by Chris Conley. So I had to get one Chris Conley reference in here.
I'm proud of you for doing so, Brandon.
No, I mean, while we're waiting, the picks in for the Packers, but speaking of win totals for the Jaguars, minus 125 for 6.5 wins. I have them about 55% likely to go under, so not seeing enough there, but I figured I'd throw that out there while we're waiting for the Packers to mercifully draft a wide receiver in the first round.
Here's the thing. Let's talk about this. So the Packers pick is in, so they're going to pick in a second. And once Goodell walks out, I'll stop talking. But with the Packers and their wide receivers, this idea that like Aaron Rodgers needs trust in his wide receivers, and no, the bottom line is Aaron Rodgers just needs good wide receivers. The only day 2 wide receivers that they've drafted in this Rodgers area, Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, and Randall Cobb. All 3 of them were productive wide receivers in the NFL and have been productive wide receivers in the NFL. Right. We can sit here and say, well, why isn't he getting enough out of Marquez Valdes-Scantling or Alan Lazard, whoever? They're all day 3 guys or undrafted guys. What do you expect? Of course he needs to gain trust with these guys because they're not elite talents, right? And so that's why I see this like, I just think the narrative is backwards, right? Like instead of saying Rodgers doesn't trust them, it's really the opposite. It's that he shouldn't trust them like other quarterbacks would not trust their wide receivers if they were consistently getting day 3 guys. And it's not that Alan Lazard is terrible. I think Alan Lazard's an amazing value right now across in every format, right? Like I think Alan Lazard's fine, but at the same time, you have to be realistic about his profile and his come up in the league and all of that. Whereas, you look, or people have asked like, well, why didn't Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson and Devontae Adams produce as rookies with Aaron Rodgers? And well, look who they were playing with. Jordy Nelson was playing with Greg Jennings and Donald Driver, right? Randall Cobb was playing with Greg Jennings and Jordy Nelson. And then Devontae Adams was playing with Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb. So he was playing, all these guys when they were rookies were playing with very good wide receivers on that team. The expectation should have never been that they were going to be these big rookie wideouts with Aaron Rodgers. Whereas if they get one here, if they get a Pickens or even a Watson, I hate to say that, but if they get a wide receiver here, they have an opportunity to walk into a 20% target share in an Aaron Rodgers-led offense. That's something that's relevant.
My body is ready for it. Sorry, I was just trolling here because
no troll.
I'm just ready. Like, all right, we're announcing the pick here. If it's not a receiver,
I'm ready for it to not be a wide receiver. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So it looks like, I think, Brandon, you have a little bit of time because their pick is in, but they're doing a Man of the Year presentation award. It looks like Walter Payton Man of the Year. So we might have a little bit here. but we'll talk about it because the Packers have made us wait, so we can make them wait as well too.
It's just a matter of if they don't go receiver, it just has to be a matter of they didn't view anyone left worth a first round pick. The question then remains, did they see anyone that way? Why did they not try to move up? They had 2 picks. Why did they not try to do anything? Right. So that's the question that's going to be asked. Again, I don't know. It should be receiver, but historically it hasn't been. So,
and their next pick is 53. And by the time 53 rolls around, the guys that I've been talking about are likely going to be gone. Like right in front of them is the Steelers. I think the Steelers are really heavily tied to Sky Moore. Sky Moore went to Shady Side Academy in Pittsburgh and played high school football with Mike Tomlin's son. Like that, like you want to hear about it. Not only that, right. But he fits exactly what Pittsburgh needs at wide receiver right now. Right. So a guy like Sky's going to be gone by pick 50, I think. I don't even think the Steelers are going to be able to pick him. But, George Pickens, early second. I mean, if they don't go wide out here, which they probably won't, just given the fact of what we've seen the Packers do over the last decade and a half, right? If they don't go wide receiver here, I guess 2 decades, because 2002 was their last one with Travon Walker. But if they don't go wide receiver here, I don't think it's smart. I really don't, because I think there's a drop off in talent. The only guy that they can probably get that you would feel decent enough about as a true number 1 guy would be like a Jalen Tolbert, like I said. And I just don't think that's a reliable thing to do on a team that only has a couple more years left of Aaron Rodgers.
Yes. And I think that the pick is in, and so we'll wait to see what this is as, the Packers selection. It's coming up on the ticker. It's defensive tackle Devontae Wyatt from Georgia.
Man, it's just how Packers fans have to be so upset. They have to be so tilted, and I would be too. I mean, genuinely, I don't think it makes that much sense from a team building standpoint. I just don't. And you can say, oh, look at the success they've won 1 Super Bowl with one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And they almost didn't win that Super Bowl. They've only been to that 1 Super Bowl. I mean, maybe they're doing something wrong, right? Like we can't just assume that things are fine. Aaron Rodgers hides a ton because it's Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he's a phenomenal, again, top 3 quarterback of all time. And I think it's a mistake to not at least, shoot your shot and go for one of those wide receivers.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of what you jeopardize, right? It's like they're always going to be in the mix because they have the quarterback position set. I mean, they have one of the top talents at the quarterback position, arguably top 5 in the league. So they're always going to be in the mix. So I think they just hang their hat on that and just let it ride. But it's one of those things like, you want to be able to hoist that Lombardi. Like the fans want to be able to celebrate successes while you have this otherworldly talent at the position, bar none. And they haven't been able to do so. And they've always been in the mix. So it's like, as a Packers fan, you always know that they're going to be able to be in it, but they don't do things in the draft, in the offseason that can allow them to get over that hump, to get to the big game, to get to the big dance. And Brandon, you hit it on the head perfectly talking about this pick before it came in. Like this was the one year, like regardless of how you felt about it, you were like, okay, we have 2 picks late. If there is a run, we are able to move up and be a part of that run. Like we are, and we don't have a Devontae Adams to fall back on. We don't have all these other guys that we've been able to fall back on before. We actually need to go out there and make a play. It really just doesn't make sense. And then, just to add insult to injury, just taking these linebackers and nose tackles here in the first round to end it out, just hilarious. I mean, as a Bears fan, I'm loving what I'm seeing from Chicago Twitter. Green Bay Sports Radio is definitely, I'm gonna have to pull up my app here and find some sports radio in Green Bay to listen to tomorrow, because that's just gonna be just chef's kiss. But we got the New England Patriots, who are picking at pick 29. Their pick is in. We'll wait to see what they do. They traded back as they usually do. This is just fun to break down, guys. It's been fun all night to break this down with you. Shout out to everybody who's still out there watching with us here on Twitch, on YouTube, on Facebook. We absolutely appreciate you guys. Absolutely love the interactions that we've been getting from in the chat and just on on Twitter as well. It's been great. So make sure you guys are rocking along with us all season long. We appreciate it.
So I'm looking more at Wyatt here, just because, what else we're going to discuss at this point, because they didn't take a receiver. But I actually mentioned, or at least I think I mentioned that the Packers were really bad against the run, right? And everyone knows that, but that just doesn't correlate to success. It doesn't correlate to wins. So this feels like it was probably a team needs like situation, but it's just not addressing the right. They have problems they need to solve. It's not the right problem to solve if you can solve it with a receiver. And again, they must not have felt that any of these guys was worth chasing. That's very surprising if that's the case, or they felt that they could just wait and get some of these guys day two. And that is just historically is a lower probability of hitting, but also I'm finding out that Wyatt's 24 years old. So that's kind of surprising for a first round pick, but
definitely.
I don't know. I just never know what the Packers are doing. Everything that I think they should do, they do like the opposite. So,
right.
I don't know.
That's what we can bank on. And then next year they'll make a splash play for a wide receiver that is somebody who they should never have gotten. Or maybe they trade for Kadarius Toney. I don't know. Maybe they have something in the bank for Deebo Samuel. I don't know. They have to have something in play. Otherwise, the fans will start to turn on the franchise, and that'll be a fun situation as we have to witness Green Bay fans going crazy for 2 off seasons in a row. It's fun. All right, so the Patriots pick is in. What are we expecting from the Patriots here, JJ? Talk to us about the Patriots. And they usually take some of these off the radar guys that nobody has ever even heard of or thought of, and they pick them and they turn them into something. Who could that be?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I feel like that's what they're bound to do. They can go in a lot of different directions. I don't think they're going to go offensive, probably. I can see them going to the defensive side. I was actually just calculating because I was curious. We've seen these wide receivers go often, in the first round here, and Jahan Dotson being probably the most surprising pick. But in my prospect model, when a guy hits a 95th percentile rating, it's a really, really good signal for that he's going to be productive in fantasy football. It's like a good cutoff. I usually tier them by every 5 percentiles. And so the guy right now in the model, I have 5 players who are over that 95th percentile mark, and Jahan Dotson's at the 94th percentile. And so I look since 2011. Last year, we also had 5 wide receivers. We had the big 3 and Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, and Jamar Chase. And then we had Rashad Bateman and Elijah Moore. Those were the 5 that were able to hit that 95th percentile mark. This year, it's, you have Drake London, you have Garrett Wilson, you have Chris Olave, Treylon Burks, and Jameson Williams, and then Jahan Dotson at the 94th percentile. That's the most that we've seen. The last 2 years is the most that we've seen over the last decade plus. And if you were to make that 94th percentile because of Jahan Dotson, then all of a sudden you have the hot top heaviest wide receiver group that we've seen, over the last decade or over the last 11 years, which, there's definitely correlation to draft capital. Draft capital is within this model because draft capital gets signal. Draft capital is predictive. But it's still, you still need to be a good wide receiver, even with decent draft capital to rank that high. So it does speak volumes to how good the higher end wide receivers are in this class.
Yeah, and the Patriots do make the pick here. They get guard Cole Strange from Chattanooga, Tennessee Chattanooga there. So FCS player. Off the
86 board. On PFF's big board.
That's what I'm saying. The Patriots always do this. They just pick a random dude at the end of the first round every
Although, to be fair, we're picking on the Packers for doing stuff that you don't expect, but the Patriots do literally the thing you expect. You can't even expect it. Like, that's how little you can expect it.
Right. And I mean, this will end up being an all-pro guard, by 2025, because it's the Patriots and the Patriots way. So they've earned a little cachet, Brandon. I feel like making these off the radar picks because they do turn these diamonds in the rough into something special. The Kansas City pick is in. They wasted no time at pick 30. And Roger Goodell is already coming up to the podium. So this will be a fun one to break down. And then after that, we got Cincinnati and we got Minnesota to talk about. So those will be 2 fun teams to break down, as Minnesota was supposed to be picking at number 12. They moved all the way back to pick number 32 in the draft. And the pick is in for the Kansas City Chiefs. They take George Karlaftis from Purdue, edge there. So Kansas City is getting an edge player to go along with their defensive unit. And it's the kid from Purdue. How do we feel about that? Brandon, I'll let you go first.
Yes, I mean, the Chiefs struggled defensively a bit last year, 21st overall by number fires metrics, 16th against the pass, which is the one you care about more than the rush. But they did get pressure on the quarterback, ranking 5th there, just didn't really pan out in terms of leading to good overall defense. So I mean, that's kind of it is what it is with the Chiefs. Really surprised that was their pick, though. And looking at their win total of 10.5, it's -110 on both the over and the under. My model has them at a 10.4 win team, so not going to have anything there. But really, really tough schedule, top-ranked schedule. 9 games within 3 points either way. So one of these teams that could be really volatile once again, and just 5 games where they're going to be favored by at least 6 points, which is 8th in the league. But maybe another weird season for the Chiefs where they're not quite as dominant in terms of the record, but still probably just as good, so long as they solve that glaring issue with Tyreek Hill's departure.
Right. Huge piece that they're going to be missing, probably more so than I think that the rest of people expect, just because they immediately go out and get Juju Smith-Schuster, and people are talking about how his stock is way up, and we haven't seen much from Juju the past couple of years. I mean, I get it. You're going from an aging Ben Roethlisberger to Patrick Mahomes, so that's definitely going to improve your stock somewhat. But we still need Juju to go out there and ball and be healthy for one thing. So interesting for the Chiefs there, but do get a defensive lineman there to help. JJ, what are your thoughts here on the Chiefs, and then maybe the Cincinnati Bengals and Minnesota Vikings as we close out day one of the draft?
Yeah, Chiefs needed help there. So, strong pick. Seems like he was a value the way that people were evaluating him. Thought that he was going to go maybe early 20s, late teens even. So overall, solid value, it seems like. I think the Bengals will go defense, probably in the secondary, I would assume, maybe safety. And then, 32 is still just up in the air in general because, I think a team hypothetically would want to trade up and trade into it to maybe get a Malik, like Seattle, let's say. But I don't know if, who knows if Minnesota will want to trade out of that.
Yeah, very, very interesting there for Minnesota and what they're able to do, as they were pretty much tied a lot to the cornerback Derek Stingley. If you were following along with some mock drafts for some people, and then Derek Stingley going earlier on probably threw a whole wrench in their system, so they were able to move back and take that for what it is. The Cincinnati Bengals, they'll be interesting. The AFC representative there in the Super Bowl, they have a lot going right for them. I think they have most of the pieces that they want in play, and they'll just kind of be able to just build some depth to go along with your team. Go ahead, JJ. I see you chiming in.
There's a tweet from Timo from Pro Football Focus at PFFMoo, and he said this is just unbelievable. So the Patriots fans, PFF has a generator where you can do a mock draft and stuff, and Patriots fans did 783,000 mock drafts on the PFF mock draft generator. 2 of them picked Cole Strange to go to the Patriots.
Get out of here.
2 out of 783,000 simulations. That's unbelievable. That's how wild that pick was.
I saw on ESPN 93% chance that he would have been available at their next pick, which I think was 54.
Unbelievable.
Get your guys though. Get your guys.
Get your guys, and shout out to those 2 people that selected Cole Strange there. I mean, they might have they might have a job in the Patriots
brother
front
and his
office.
mom.
Right? Yeah, right. Probably. Oh my goodness, that is hilarious. Let's see. We got these picks that are going to be coming in here. And as we get ready to kind of close it out with everybody, want to just make sure we're thinking on the people who are rocking along with us here on YouTube, on Twitch, on Facebook as well. We just want to say thank you to you guys. We know it's been a long one. We're almost at the 3:30 mark here for the draft. It's always that long stream for us, but we appreciate it, guys. We do it for you guys, and we're happy to have you here and just be able to talk about these picks. This is always fun. This is all the build up, and this is what we look forward to in the off season. So it's good. I want to bring in big_4_dog, who's coming in on Twitch asking about how you enter the contest. Well, big dog, big 4 dog, we're going to bring up producer Andrew Greenblatt. He's going to bring up the QR code here so that you can just go ahead and scan that QR code on the screen and make sure that you enter into that contest. I also believe that we have it in the description as well. As you see JJ there doing his best Vanna White impression. For those of you guys who are old enough to know to know her, got that showing you the QR code. There's also in the description that you guys can enter in for 2 contests, guys. We got an NFL jersey giveaway that we're doing. We also got $100 in FanDuel credits. These are 2 contests that you don't want to miss out on if you're partaking in everything that we're offering. These are 2 contests that you definitely want to be a part of. So make sure you scan that QR code. Thanks to producer Andrew Greenblatt, who is helping us out here on the back end. Really appreciate it. Couldn't do it without you, Andrew. 2 picks left, guys. We're at the home stretch, but I do want to talk about day 2, as we won't be doing our normal day 2 live stream as we normally have done in the past. But what are maybe just a headline or 2, storyline, anything that you guys would be looking at in day 2 as we, as we'll close this out, and then that will be the next thing we're looking forward to.
Storylines for me for day 2 are definitely quarterback. I just want to see where these guys go. Apparently this is not a good sign for these quarterbacks who I thought all could kind of be in the mix for the QB1, honestly. Again, we've kind of consensus started to become Malik Willis being the QB1. Obviously that wasn't the case. So now what happens at quarterback? Brandon? I don't know. Could you do you know, JJ? Since I was waiting for.
Oh boy.
But yeah, I think the QBs is what I'm looking for here, which I guess again is not going to have the hugest fantasy impact for all these like day 2 quarterbacks. So sorry for any dynasty teams that really need quarterback help. Not the best sign, but I think that's the one thing that I keep coming back to now is a lot of the big name receivers, most of them, I mean, virtually all of them off the board. And so what's left for me is quarterback, and I guess where we finally see Breece Hall.
Excellent. Before I let you go, because I do want to get your day 2 thoughts for sure. We do have safety Daxton Hill from Michigan going to the Cincinnati Bengals there. So, a secondary that was already stout. They bring in a guy like this on day 1 who's going to come in and just provide them a little bit more depth to that secondary to be able to rotate some pieces in.
Yeah, they had a good free agency period, and when you have a good free agency period, it allows you to have more flexibility during the draft. So, it's good on the Bengals. They're gonna be another, they're gonna have another good season this year. They're good on paper.
Yeah, that's going to be an impact play, and they're going to be primed to be right there again at the end of the season, trying to compete for that Lombardi once again. JJ, before I get your thoughts here on day 2, I wanted to bring up some interesting stuff that's coming through on Twitter from JP Finlay there. I guess Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew were talking to the media just about the Dotson pick, saying that there was a lot of value that they saw in the middle of the draft, so that trading down for them was a priority. They talk about his Dotson. They talk about he's got speed, he's super competitive, tremendous ball skills, and adds punt return ability. Ron Rivera also went on to say that Dotson reminds him of Deshaun Jackson and Steve Smith. Commanders' offensive staff had Dotson graded high. So if that 94%, does that coach speak put him at the 95 percentile mark?
No. I think Dotson's going to be my wide receiver 6 in my dynasty rankings, behind those big 5. And, I could honestly see if somehow, some way, like a certain wideout goes to Green Bay or goes to Kansas City, I could see them jumping him too. I don't mind Dotson. Like I said, I think he's a really, really solid wideout. The Steve Smith comp, though, I do understand, like, he plays bigger than his size, similar to Steve Smith, but he's not nearly as girthy as Steve Smith was. Steve Smith was built like a rock, like he was just very, very solid. Jahan Dotson's more like a T.Y. Hilton. That was my comp for him, my high-end comp for him. He had some rougher comps, though, too. So he's solid. I was just thinking that he would be more of a late first rather than a mid first round pick. And, the landing spot's not that ideal given the fact that he's not going to take over as the one, at least in the short term, because Terry McLaurin's there.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I always love those initial chats from the coach.
I'm
and
surprised
the GM
they like
owners.
the pick that they made. Yeah,
right, exactly. And not only that, but we're going to throw out some big high profile names when we're talking about this guy and who we can compare him to.
Yeah,
wide receiver. I'm looking at the Minnesota Vikings, and that's making me think of when they drafted Justin Jefferson at wide receiver here. But the Minnesota Vikings are going to make their pick at pick 32 in the first round. Pick is in. They've had some questionable picks in the first round in recent years, but did hit a home run there with Justin Jefferson, and we'll see what they're able to do either on the offensive or defensive side of the ball that makes them feel like they're set to take on 2022. JJ, day 2 thoughts for you.
Yeah, man. I have a lot. I am prepared to see how the wide receiver position obviously shakes out and goes down. I think that the quarterback position is really interesting given there are good quarterbacks remaining. Well, within this draft class, we only see Kenny Pickett go, assuming that Minnesota doesn't take one here or didn't take one here. So look at the top of the next round. You have teams like, I think Detroit's still up there. I don't have an updated sheet looking at the draft picks and stuff, but like Detroit, the Giants, the Texans, the Panthers, all of those teams are, in play to get a quarterback. And I would expect some of them to get a quarterback. And then, obviously day 2 is a running back day. You're going to see Breece Hall go off the board, Kenneth Walker go off the board. Those are two really strong running backs who are going to be strong fantasy assets. And then, there's been question marks as to who the RB3 is really going to be in this class. And one player that I'm just watching because I want to know how to sort of approach him in rookie drafts is Isaiah Spiller, who did not test well as an athlete. I think he could fall in the draft, but it seems like the fantasy community and the media likes him less than NFL teams might. NFL teams might like him a little bit more. And so if he does get day 2 capital, that's great. But I'm just kind of watching that running back class after Kenneth Walker gets drafted, assuming Breece Hall goes RB1, just watching that running back class because it's fairly deep. It's just, it doesn't have that many studs.
Yeah. We're looking at Daniel, at least on the NFL network stream, looking at the Daniel Jeremiah big board, no wide receivers there to talk about, but definitely some defensive guys, edge cornerbacks. He had Breece Hall up there as well for day 2. The Detroit Lions will pick 14 on day 2 in that slot. The Minnesota Vikings, their pick is in. Goodell's at the podium. They're going to pick the second pick of day 2 in the second round there. They're going to be right after Tampa Bay if they decide to keep that pick. So basically back-to-back picks for them essentially. And with this first pick, they take safety Lewis Sign from Georgia there, safety there, 6'2" safety to close out day 1 of the draft. So we kind of, we start off with a defensive run. We kind of see the crazy madness with trades and wide receivers going off in the middle. And then it kind of ends out with some of these trench guys and defensive guys. So that's where it stands for the 2002 NFL draft first round. It's in the books. There's definitely going to be a lot of hot takes that are going to be going on about some of these teams. But this was fun. It was fun to be able to chop it up with you guys, especially fun to be able to chop it up with the listeners, guys. I appreciate you guys coming into the YouTube comments, coming in on Twitch and on Facebook as well. Definitely rocking along with this. You guys got any final words for the people as the draft will roll along, but without us?
I have one thing to say. ACC champion, Super Bowl champion.
I love it. Brandon, can you top that?
I don't think I can. I was going to say something about how we talked about tiers in the draft. I think we got tiers with like the different segments of the draft, but I think JJ goes out on top with that one.
He definitely does, and we did miss our guy. He only came up a couple times, Mr. Jim Sonis himself. You guys, if you aren't following him already, you need to be. He's at Jim Sonis. He's enjoying his vacation right now, but he'll come back to the madness if he's not paying attention already. I saw him kind of sneaking some F1 stuff, kind of sneaking some racing because he couldn't help himself. But he's gonna come back to a whirlwind, and it's gonna be fun to talk about it with him for sure. For sure. Guys, that is going to do it for our FanDuel Day 1 NFL Draft stream, our live stream here. Again, we appreciate you guys rocking along with us all season long. Like we said, football, this is a beast. NFL never sleeps. It's going on all the time, 365, and we got the content for you here on the FanDuel YouTube channel. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at FanDuel. Follow the FanDuel Sportsbook. We got a ton of stuff that we're offering, and it's just going to even get better as we start to see these guys get placed on NFL teams, and we'll be able to break that down for you. So make sure you're paying along with us. I gotta shout out Jessica Gridiron who joined us at Gridiron and Wine. She was doing double duty tonight, able to come in and give you guys some betting tips. Make sure you follow her again on Twitter at Gridiron and Wine. She's been doing some great stuff there with futures on all sports, but definitely she'll be getting after it with NFL, especially as the NFL schedule is set to be released in May. Brandon Gdula, you can follow him on Twitter at Gdula 13, managing editor for Number Fire. Make sure you guys are getting after that. That's one half of the Heat Check podcast there. Him and Jim do a great job breaking it down. We'll have fun stuff to talk about from a DFS perspective. And JJ Zachariason really doesn't need any introduction or sign off at Late Round QB. You know the trademark. He's also got Late Round Fantasy Football. You guys got to make sure that you're following along for his content. I mean, season long, everything that he does, mailbag questions for you, start, sit. He's going on too. So JJ's been holding down the fort there. At Late Round QB is where you can follow him. And then myself, Ryan Williams, you can follow me on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W, doing DFS and betting content for you guys on the FanDuel channel. And we got to shout out producer Andrew Greenblatt. This wouldn't be possible without you, Andrew. So thanks so much, guys. Keep tabs on what we're doing. We're offering all the content for you all season long. We'll catch you guys next time. But until then, enjoy the rest of the NFL draft. Peace.